Chapter 1065. Between the gloomy heaven and earth, strands and strands of the nine serenities, evil wind spread out in the void like black rays of light, constantly drifting and freezing everything it came into contact with. On the ground, scarlet and dirty blood flowed everywhere like a boundless sea of blood. On the surface of the sea of blood, huge blood bubbles formed and burst, emitting a suffocating stench. Within the sea of blood, everything seemed to have ceased to exist. There were only streaks of murky yellow water that crisscrossed and flowed silently. It was strange, unfathomable, and horrifying. It seemed as if it could purify everything, yet it also caused everything to turn pale and lose its vitality. Countless huge ravines appeared on the ground. When the Nether Blood Sea and the Yellow Springs River encountered these ravines, they poured down like waterfalls. But these waterfalls were not at the bottom. From the deepest part of the abyss, a turbulent and domineering bluish-purple demonic fire soared into the sky, colliding with the dirty blood and the yellow water, causing cracks to appear in the space. Below the nether evil flame, there was the black and gloomy, profound heaven calamity flame burning fiercely, although it was not as violent as the nether evil flame. It was also constantly devouring everything to strengthen itself, revealing an extremely greedy and evil intent. Above the Rift Valley, under the nether evil wind in the sky, the earth was surging with a boundless red light, like fog, like wind but not like wind. Within the red light, there were countless evil ghosts and spirits, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, screaming and howling. The fierce evil wind constantly rubbed against the Blood River true water and the Yellow Springs true water on the ground, causing violent collisions. The nether evil flame, the profound heaven calamity flame, the Blood River true water, the Yellow Springs true water, the nine serenities evil wind, the nether evil wind, and other fierce forces that were rarely seen in the outside world seemed to be endless and could be seen everywhere. Rather than saying that this strange foreign space was filled with these disasters, it would be better to say that this side of the world was formed by these disasters. In addition, there were all kinds of natural disasters and earthly tribulations raging in this vast and boundless foreign space. Everything seemed like the end of the world. This was a completely unsuitable place for any sentient life to live. Even those with the strongest willpower who had experienced endless hardships and dangers would be dazzled when they stepped into this world. Because this was the Nether Earth Sea, the most mysterious place in the seven seas of heavenly origin, apart from the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea. There were no resources or life in this place, only endless destructive power and terrifying disasters. Even the chaotic empty sea and void battlefield didn't always have terrifying void turbulence erupting. Although it was extremely dangerous for cultivators to enter, they could at least survive and hide. Within the Netherworld Ocean, there were all sorts of evil energies everywhere. This was a world completely made up of calamities. However, in this world, there was an area where space was completely distorted, as if it was constantly changing. The chaotic space formed many worlds within worlds, relying on the existence of the Netherworld Ocean world. They were like giant bubbles, floating between heaven and earth. These bubbles were separated from each other and did not come into contact with each other, so it was difficult for them to discover each other. Because of the chaotic changes in space, it looked like they were very close to each other from afar, but in reality, they were very far apart. If someone came out of one of the small worlds, they would not be able to go to the other small worlds. At the same time, very few people would come out and directly step into the Netherworld Sea to face the overwhelming calamity. In these small worlds, because of the special energy isolation, the world within the world within the world, although there were Nether Evil Emperor and other calamities wreaking havoc, it was much safer than the outside world. All of the worlds within the world, although they did not come into contact with each other, and it was difficult to detect the existence of other small worlds. But in reality, these worlds within the world were all connected by mysterious existence. It was a bright red pillar of light, standing tall in the netherworld ocean world, as if it was the pillar that held up the heavens. But this bright red pillar of light made one unable to feel at ease when they saw it, and unable to be at ease. Instead, it made one feel even more uneasy, making one feel danger and fear. One world within a world, under the chaotic interweaving of space, surrounded this bright red pillar of light. One of the world within a world was surrounded by black fog all year round, unable to see the light of day. In the center of the black fog stood a giant palace. Its style wasn't very beautiful, but it was majestic and grand. It was just that the gloomy feeling of the palace made this grand atmosphere dilute by a lot, adding a sense of strangeness to it. In the depths of the palace, there was a tunnel that led to a quiet room. Outside the quiet room, there were 4 stone statues, all black and tall, emitting waves of evil and deathly aura. Suddenly, the 4 stone statues trembled at the same time, and as if they had come to life, they turned to look at the other end of the tunnel. There was a white as paper-skinned, handsome face, but his expression was cruel and gloomy, a black-clothed youth, walking towards the quiet room. The black-clothed youth walked to the outside of the quiet room, stopping, not saying a word. And one of the 4 stone statues turned to look at the quiet room. A low voice sounded out. "Master, Gongzi Zhe is here." After a long while, the door to the quiet room suddenly opened. The black-clothed youth stepped in. The door closed behind him. The 4 black stone statues once again fell silent. Within the quiet room, a black-clothed Taoist with his back facing the door silently sat cross-legged. This was a quiet room. The 4 sides of the walls, the ceiling above his head, the floor below his feet, everything seemed to be transparent, through which one could see the crazy and brutal netherworld ocean calamity outside. The black-clothed youth bowed to the Taoist. "Greetings, master." The black-clothed Taoist did not speak, still minding his own business and meditating. The black-clothed youth called Gongzi Zhe did not seem to be in a hurry, silently kneeling on the ground, waiting for the black-clothed Taoist to stop. After a long while, the black-clothed Taoist finally stopped and asked calmly, "What is it?" Gongzi Zhe replied, "There is news from the ancient world of immortals, that the master of the Taoist Xianmen personally went to the ancient world to propose marriage for his disciple, Xiao Yin to Gu Zhen'er, the daughter of the current clan leader of the Gu clan." The black-clothed Taoist said, "This is already within our expectations." Gongzi Zhe remained silent. The black-clothed Taoist stood up from the ground, turned around and looked at him. "Master knows that you have thoughts about Gu Zhen'er, but it is best to give up this idea as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will only ruin His Majesty's and Master's plans. Right now, let Xianmen, Tianzong, and Taishu Temple fight. It is not appropriate for us to expose the slightest trace of our whereabouts." This black-clothed Taoist turned around. He had the appearance of a middle-aged Taoist, his face like jade, his beard 3 feet long. His demeanor was rather outstanding, but his skin was extremely pale, giving him an extra eerie feeling. But all of this was not as frightening as the expression in his eyes. Looking into his eyes, it was as if he was watching the terrifying scene of destruction in the netherworld ocean outside. This disciple understands. Gongzi Zhe's gaze had an instant of brutality, unwillingness, cruelty, and madness. His mana and aura were somewhat unstable, but he quickly restrained his impulses, regaining his calm. The black-clothed Taoist looked at him indifferently. "It is best that you understand, not to mention that this trip of Xianmen Tianzong may not be smooth. Even if it is just a marriage proposal, it will also cause the ancient world of immortals and Xianmen Tianzong to become extremely close. Taishu Temple will not sit idly by." Gongzi Zhe nodded. "Master's teachings are right. When His Majesty ascends to the throne again, are you still afraid that a mere woman will not be able to do it? Don't let yourself wallow in desire. That way you will not be able to achieve great things." Silently, the black-clothed Taoist said, "After so many years, His Majesty has finally returned to the world. I have suffered in this netherworld ocean for so many years, and it is finally time for me to come out. No one, no matter what, is allowed to destroy this great plan. Gongzi Zhe kowtowed and said, Reincarnation Taoist and Netherworld Taoist have both fallen. Underworld Hall Master Su Anda has betrayed His Majesty and was killed. His Majesty only has you as a successor, Master. With this success, Master, you will definitely be above tens of thousands of people. This black-clothed Taoist was the third disciple of the king of the underworld, Yu Ming Taoist, who had been missing all these years. As expected, he was hiding in the Netherworld Ocean, plotting in secret. He shook his head. It is still too early to say these things. Gongzi Zhe asked again, but the remnant stone of heavenly calamity in the ancient world of immortals, and that Shaoyin Yu Ming Taoist waved his hand. Let's think about it at length. Now is not the time. Quietly waiting for the war between the two worlds to begin is what we should do. Yes, Master. Gongzi Zhe nodded. After a slight hesitation, he looked at Yu Ming Taoist and asked, Master, how is His Majesty's recovery? Xianmen Tianzong, Taishu Temple, Great Qin Dynasty, Great Zhou Dynasty, and other forces are all looking for him. Other than the Netherworld Ocean realm, where else is safe? Yu Ming Taoist looked at him silently. This is not something you should be asking. Yu Ming Taoist hurriedly bowed. This disciple has spoken indiscreetly. Please forgive me, Master. Yu Ming Taoist waved his sleeve. Go to the Netherworld pool and stay for 10 days as punishment. Yes, Master. Gongzi Zhe's body trembled slightly, as if he had thought of something terrifying, but he did not dare to have any objections. Instead, as if he had been pardoned, he left the room. After he left, the 4 stone statues outside the door trembled slightly, and one of them said coldly, Shouldn't Zhe become stupid when it comes to matters involving the daughter of the Gu clan leader? He is the disciple that Master is most proud of. With his current cultivation, in our world within a world, he can be said to be the number 1 person below Master. Even among the subordinates of His Majesty, he is one of the strongest. Another stone statue said, if he can break through the knot in his heart, his future will definitely be limitless. The first stone statue to speak coldly snorted, I hope that today's matter will wake him up. Otherwise, he will completely disappoint Master, and he will have no future to speak of. As he walked out of the passageway step by step and passed through the great hall, Shidaze's expression was still very gloomy. He silently walked into the Netherworld pool that Yu Ming Taoist used to punish his subordinates. Those who entered the Netherworld pool, it was as if they had directly stepped into the Netherworld Ocean. It was just that there would not be any danger to their lives, but for those who were punished, it was unspeakably painful, a life worse than death. But when Shintaze's entire body sank in the Netherworld pool and was submerged by the pool water, a faint smile that was hard to understand appeared on his face. At the same time, Lin Feng and his disciples also officially stepped into the ancient longevity world. Chapter 1066. The myriad worlds in the heavens all had their own mysteries. The domain passageways that connected to the vast thousand worlds were also very strange. Just like the dimensional world where the underworld hall was hiding, the only passageway was connected to the void battlefield. The domain passageway that connected the ancient longevity world and the vast thousand worlds was also quite special. It was a passageway that could be opened or closed, just like the Stargate that Lin Feng had to enter and exit the desolate ancient star sea. However, although it could be opened and closed, the location of the entrance and exit was fixed. The control of opening and closing was in the hands of the Gu clan. Whether it was opened or closed was decided by the Gu clan. Therefore, it was very difficult for the outside world to freely enter and exit the ancient longevity world. Although it was not as secretive as the dimensional world where the underworld hall was hiding, it was almost isolated from the outside world. Other than a few people, very few people knew how to go to the ancient longevity world. Most people did not even know of the existence of this dimensional world. However, in order to keep it secret, the ancient emperor rarely opened the passageway. To enter and exit the vast thousand worlds, they had to go through their special identity. Every time someone entered the vast thousand worlds, it would attract the attention of the few people who knew about it. Therefore, unless it was necessary, the ancient longevity world was always in a closed state. If the Gu clan's golden elixir cultivators wanted to go through the void thunder tribulation, a considerable number of people would rather choose the dangerous void battlefield. When Xiao Yin first went to the ancient longevity world, it was Xiao Zheng who guided him. Taking advantage of the opening of the domain passageway, he snuck into the ancient longevity world. And when Lin Feng went to find Xiao Yin, it was because he had left a mark on Xiao Yan's body and then borrowed the power of the mysterious sky treasure tree to cross the void and rush over. However, the world changed. After the Battle of Xiling City, the communication between Xianmen, Tianzong, and the ancient longevity world was no longer so difficult. Before, when Xiao Yin went to the ancient longevity world again, he would first contact the Gu clan, and then they would open the domain passageway and openly enter the ancient longevity world. This trip of Lin Feng and his disciple was naturally the same. The group traveled south, met up with Yang Qing, and then came to the southern wasteland together. Yang Qing had been practicing medicine outside for the past few years. Most of his time was spent on picking herbs and treating illnesses. He did not have a heavenly cave that could accelerate time, nor did he have a lot of time to cultivate. Therefore, his current cultivation realm had fallen behind a lot. Not only had he been surpassed by Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu, but even his disciple Zhou Yunsong was about to catch up with him. But right now, Yang Qing is no longer like in the past when he was young, worrying about his slow progress, afraid of losing face for Lin Feng. Instead, he is not impatient. His state of mind is as calm as usual. In addition to his daily medical practice, he would also try to figure out Dao skills and divine arts to train his magical power. He would think a lot and accumulate a lot of inspiration. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, his mind was clear, and his perception of the Tao of heaven and earth had deepened. At the same time, as he traveled around the world, he had encountered quite a few fortuitous encounters and gained quite a lot. At this moment, Yang Qing was just short of water to grind and seriously accumulate and absorb her harvest. Over the past few days, Yang Qing had only returned to Jade Capital Mountain once. He felt that he had accumulated enough and that it was time to sort it out. Thus, he cultivated in the mysterious Skytime Cave for a period of time. Under the 100-fold acceleration of time, he successfully broke through the bottleneck and advanced to the middle stage of the Yuanying realm. However, after that, Yang Qing left the mountain once again and resumed his career as a doctor. Now he was still in the middle stage of Yuanying. However, when Lin Feng, Xiao Yin, and the others saw the light in his eyes, they knew that his accumulation had once again become extremely abundant. The only thing left for him to improve further was the painstaking work of accumulating and organizing. Fifth junior brother, long time no see, Xiao Yin said with a smile. Yang Qing also smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't expect that I would be able to meet eldest senior brother at the right time to propose marriage." Xiao Yin said, "That's right. There's someone you should meet." He spread his sleeves, and a figure flew in front of Yang Qing. It was a young man with delicate features and a gentle temperament. This young man's temperament and mental state were somewhat similar to Yang Qing's when he was young. He was gentle and polite, causing people to feel warmth in their hearts. When Yang Qing saw him, he smiled and said, "You're Duanmu, right? You've already grown up." When the young man saw Yang Qing, his expression was also somewhat emotional. Even the rims of his eyes were slightly red. He solemnly bowed towards Yang Qing and said, "Disciple Duanmu Hong greets fifth senior granduncle." He was an infant that Yang Qing had picked up at the bank of a spirit spring called Luo Hong after the battle of the exterminating Xian dynasty. He only had a jade pendant on him that had the word Duanmu engraved on it, so Yang Qing named him Duanmu Hong. At that time, Duanmu Hong was seriously ill and on the verge of death. Yang Qing took care of him along the way and finally made the child recover. Then, when he returned to Jade Capital Mountain, he brought him up the mountain. When he was slightly older, he passed the entrance examination and became a foundation disciple. When Duanmu Hong was young, he displayed great interest and talent in medicine and the way of pills. When he was still a foundation disciple, he even followed Yang Qing to practice medicine for a short period of time. He also specially went to the Mirror Lake Academy, founded by Zhu Yi, to study. As for Yang Qing, she was his savior and also someone he admired and respected. However, Yang Qing was often not on the mountain and had temporarily given up on the idea of taking him in as a disciple. As for Zhou Yunsong, he was not proficient in medicine and the way of alchemy. Thus, after Duanmu Hong passed the direct disciple examination, he became Fun Tianya's disciple to learn. He was now Tang Jun's direct disciple. Although he was only at the foundation stage, his level of alchemy was already quite exquisite. Moreover, his talent in cultivation was also extremely high. He was extremely outstanding among the third-generation direct disciples of Fun Tianya and was highly anticipated. Xiao Yin and Tang Jun also thought very highly of this diligent and talented young disciple. Sometimes, Xiao Yin would even personally give him pointers on the way of alchemy. Yang Qing looked at the sick child who was on the verge of death back then. Now, he had grown up and had a bright future. His heart was filled with joy. Lin Feng looked at the few of them, reminiscing about the old days, and smiled. However, at this moment, his heart suddenly moved, and he raised his eyes to look at the distant horizon. He sat cross-legged on the great sage Lu Yuan's shoulder. On the other shoulder, Zhu Yi's gaze also fell in the same direction. On the other side, Xiao Yin sat cross-legged on the back of the distant star White Tiger. He also looked into the distant horizon. There, the void opened, and 3 figures appeared. The one in front was a tall, middle-aged man with a thin face. Beside him, there were 2 other men on his left and right. The aura of the 3 people was like a deep pool and a high mountain. It was contained and not released. The middle-aged man with a thin face in the lead was impressively at the Tao Integration Realm. The 2 people beside him were also at the Void Return Realm. One of them could be considered a familiar face. It was Gu Peng, who had rushed to Jiejing Mountain with Xiao Zhen during the Battle of Exterminating Xian. All these years, when Xiao Yin went to the ancient immortals world, he was usually in charge of receiving them. As for the middle-aged man with a thin face, Xiao Yin had also seen him before. He used his dermic power to transmit his voice to Lin Feng and the others. Master, this is also Zhen Er's uncle. His name is Gu Cheng. I call him Uncle Cheng like Zhen. After a short pause, Xiao Yin continued. In the bloodline of the ancient emperors, they are too inclined towards our Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng, Zhu Yi, and Li Yuanfang heard this and immediately understood. Within the bloodline of the ancient emperors, there were also different opinions about the future development of Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple. Among the 3 great experts within the clan, Xiao Zhen father, the new generation ancient emperor, and the current clan leader of the ancient clan, Gu Jun, was at the first tribulation stage. At the same time, he was also the strongest expert in the bloodline of the ancient emperors. He had never expressed his position clearly, but he had tacitly allowed Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhen to interact, which could be considered as showing some inclination. The other 2 great experts were at the Tao Integration Realm. Gu Cheng, who was in front of them, favored Xianmen Tianzong, while the other generation elder, Gu Yuankai, who was Gu Jun and Gu Cheng's uncle, favored Taishu Temple. What is worth mentioning is that the Gu clan currently has 2 Mayana-level magic treasures. One has never expressed its position. The other agrees with Gu Yuankai's point of view, more optimistic that the Void Temple will prevail in the future. When Gu Cheng and Gu Peng saw Lin Feng and the others, they also came forward to welcome them. Master of the Celestial Gate, we greet you. Their gazes fell on great sage Lu Yuan and the Yuanxing White Tiger. Although their expressions did not change, their hearts were beating wildly. This White Tiger seems to be pure-blooded. Gu Cheng and the others were a little surprised. They had never seen a pure-blooded White Tiger before, but they could feel the demonic power fluctuations and power intent from Yuanxing's body. After all, there was a huge difference between a pure-blooded White Tiger and a mixed-blooded White Tiger. If there were still some doubts about Yuanxing White Tiger, then Great Sage Lu Yuan was a great demon at the Star Soul Fusion Realm. Gu Cheng and the others would not have the slightest misunderstanding. This should be the Lu Yuan that the Master of the Celestial Gate captured when he went to Infinite Wasteland in the past. It is rumored that he is extremely powerful. Although Great Sage Lu Yuan did not have a terrifying demonic power aura around him, Gu Cheng and the others would not underestimate him in the slightest. Right now, this big demon looks harmless, but that's because under Lin Feng's orders, he completely restrained his demon energy aura. Otherwise, if he recklessly displayed it, forget about Gu Cheng, even Gu Peng and Gu Liang would be under immense pressure. Having Great Sage Lu Yuan as a mount was indeed flashy, but Lin Feng did not have the slightest intention of giving Gu City and the others a show of strength. With Lin Feng's current status, he naturally did not need to do so. Moreover, Gu Cheng, Gu Peng, and Gu Liang were all ancient clan experts who were close to the celestial sect of wonders. When Gu Cheng and the others saw this scene, they nodded in their hearts. It is really not easy to subdue such a great demon. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Thank you for coming to welcome us." A Dao Integration Realm expert and 2 Void Return Realm experts came out of the ancient world together. They even left the realm passageway entrance to welcome them. Compared to the ancient emperor's bloodline that had always been closed off, such a welcome was extremely grand. Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Yang Qing, and Li Yuanfang also cupped their hands in greeting. Gu Cheng smiled and said, "Your master and disciple are too serious. Since the master of the Celestial Gate has personally come to visit, our clan will naturally not be disrespectful." He gestured with his hand. "Everyone, this way please." The group continued south and soon saw a huge realm passageway entrance in the sky. Xiao Yin had been here more than once, so he had naturally introduced it to his master and senior and junior brothers. When everyone saw the geographical location of the realm passageway entrance, they knew that it was the entrance to the ancient longevity world. Through the realm passageway, they could vaguely see an incomparably vast world in the distance. Chapter 1067. Upon entering the ancient longevity world, an ancient and desolate aura surged towards them, causing them to feel that this place was desolate and primitive. As far as the eye could see, all they could see was a desolate wasteland, which made this place seem even more dilapidated. However, upon closer inspection, they could feel that this dimensional realm seemed to contain endless vitality amidst the desolation. The flow of spiritual energy in this world, alternating between desolation and decline and flourishing, existed in a unique and profound way. The ancient longevity world lives up to its name, is indeed worthy of its name. Zhu Yi stood on the wasteland, and after sensing for a moment, he understood the profoundness. Generally speaking, the dimensional realm cannot be compared to a great thousand world. Its rate of decline is much faster than that of the Great Thousand Divine Land or Infinite Wasteland. This is especially so when there are a large number of cultivators living and cultivating there. A dimensional realm is like a living being. It has its own lifespan and limits. It will age and decline, and when it exceeds its limits, the spiritual energy in the dimensional realm will gradually dissipate, and it will become a very ordinary world. Mortals can live normally, and plants and animals can also reproduce normally. However, for us cultivators, it is no longer beneficial for cultivation, and it is difficult for all kinds of heavenly treasures to form. Li Yuanfang looked at the world in front of him, and after a moment, he nodded. That is indeed so. However, generally speaking, the rate of spiritual energy in a dimensional realm is also very slow. However, this ancient longevity world has existed for too long. The descendants of the ancient emperors have been recuperating here for a long time, and it has been passed down from generation to generation. It has already been such a long time since the end of the ancient times, but the flow of spiritual energy in this ancient longevity world is still so strong, as if it has not been corroded by the passage of time. is really rare. I think it should be related to the mysterious changes in spiritual energy that we are feeling right now, and the principle of the transformation between desolation and revival. Li Yuanfang's eyes lit up, and he said, "This is the result of a formation." Zhu Yi and he both looked toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled and nodded. The ancient emperor's bloodline wanted to hide from the world, to be self-sufficient as much as possible, to have less contact with the outside world. Frequently moving and changing places is not good. That's why from the very beginning, Zhen Er's ancestors built the imperial city in this realm and laid down the South Pole longevity formation with the imperial city as the center. The changes we are feeling in the ancient realm right now is the result of the spreading influence of the South Pole longevity formation's power. Over the years, the ancestors of the Gu family continuously strengthened and improved the formation and set up arrangements in the ancient world. Now, the formation's power has affected every inch of the land here. Yang Qing looked around. I heard eldest senior brother mention before that there are many spiritual grasses and medicines that are almost extinct in the vast thousand worlds here. Under the cover of the South Pole longevity formation, their growth and reproduction should be very vigorous. Speaking of which, the development of the path of alchemy and medicine in the human cultivation world has made several great leaps. Two of them were in the ancient times, during the reign of Xia Huang and the ancient emperor. Unfortunately, they did not get along well with each other, and there was also the king of the underworld in between. Otherwise, the path of alchemy and medicine would have developed even more rapidly in that era. Hearing Yang Qing's words, Xiao Yin smiled. Fifth junior brother, you are the same as me in the past. People spread false rumors, and many truths are buried in the long history. People who do not understand the inside story often make the wrong interpretation. What? Yang Qing was slightly startled. Xiao Yin smiled and said, regarding Xia Huang and the ancient emperor, I once inadvertently mentioned it in a casual conversation with Zhen Er. Later, I heard from Zhen Er that I roughly knew what was going on. When Xia Huang was on the throne, the ancient emperor only began to learn Tao. There were indeed conflicts between the two, but it was not between Xia Huang himself and the ancient emperor. Instead, it was Xia Huang's people who were unfilial and tyrannical, bullying the ancient emperor and his people. Xiao Yin said slowly, Xia Huang can be said to be a wise ruler. He vigorously developed the path of alchemy and medicine, refining Ding of Shenzhou, and preferred to support the growth of cultivators with potential and talent. Many experts who rose later, when they were just starting out, had received the favor of Xia Huang. In that era, when Qiang shouldered the divine land with an iron shoulder and shook Tianwang region alone, while Xia Huang helped the human cultivation world accumulate strength. But Xia Huang was generous to other cultivators and even more generous to his own people to the extent of condoning and shielding them. At that time, there were many people in Xia Huang's clan who used the tiger's power to intimidate others, and they were very unhappy with other human forces. They often needed Xia Huang's help to clean up the aftermath. Xiao Yin said and shook his head. It is natural to be generous to one's own people. Whether it is the main sect, Taishu Temple, Mount Shu, the state of Zhou, or the state of Qin, except for a few forces, everyone is the same. But there is always a need for daily teaching and discipline. But no one is perfect. Xia Huang is good at everything. But not only is he lenient to his own people when they commit crimes, he is also negligent in daily discipline, so that there are many crooked people. If the filthy things they commit were done by the disciples of the main sect, any one of them would be enough to abolish their cultivation and put them in prison for life. Some of them would even be directly punished. Many people often choose to bear with it for Xia Huang's sake, but the contradictions are actually piling up. At this point, Xiao Yin paused for a moment. Although the contradictions against the rule of the human emperor completely erupted during the reign of the king of the underworld. In fact, when Xia Huang was on the throne, the seeds of dissatisfaction had already been planted. It was just that Xia Huang was wise and tolerant. Although the seeds had taken root, they did not really germinate and burst out of the soil. Zhu Yi, Yang Qing, and Li Yuanfang all nodded when they heard this. Zhu Yi said slowly, "When the king of the underworld first ascended the throne, before he showed his fangs, he had also pretended to be a wise ruler for many years. At the beginning, he relied on settling the crimes of Xia Huang's people. Not only did he not make people feel cold in their hearts, but he also won the praise of the entire divine land and won the hearts of many people. It can be seen how hated Xia Huang's people were at that time. Thinking that Xia Huang had died because of the king of the underworld's assassination, everyone could not help but fall silent for a moment. Xiao Yin continued, Xia Huang, including Emperor Xia Huang, was generous to his people. He especially doted on his children. Xia Huang's son was lustful, arrogant, and domineering. He often snatched and occupied beautiful women, many of whom were noble ladies from other human forces. It can be said that other than Taishu Temple, which he did not dare to directly snatch, there was no one else in the divine land that he did not dare to do. Once, he forcefully snatched a woman from the ancient emperor's clan, which caused the ancient clan to rebel. Xiao Yin sighed. After the incident, Xia Huang received a report. After understanding the situation, he also punished his son and clansmen. However, because of Xia Huang's son's plea for leniency, at the end of the day, he lifted them up high and let them down lightly. Xia Huang greatly compensated the ancient clan in terms of resources. He also gave pointers to many of the younger generation of the ancient clan. The ancient emperor, who had just realized the great path at that time, was one of them. When the ancient emperor was young, he displayed outstanding aptitude. Thus, Xia Huang valued him and focused on cultivating him. Strictly speaking, the two of them could even be considered half teacher and half disciple. Therefore, the ancient emperor actually respected Xia Huang very much. Xiao Yin said, however, it was a pity that he and Xia Huang's son were like fire and water. In the future, there were many disputes and frictions. However, for the sake of Xia Huang, the ancient emperor tolerated them most of the time. Yang Qing nodded in understanding. The rumors of the discord between Xia Huang and the ancient emperor actually originated from the grudges between the ancient emperor and Xia Huang's clansmen. Xiao Yin nodded. That's right. According to the ancient records of the Zhan clan, when the news of Xia Huang's death came, the ancient emperor once wore mourning clothes for Xia Huang as a disciple in private. His gaze swept across the wasteland in front of the ancient longevity world. Among the previous human emperors, the ones who were most proficient in concocting elixirs were Emperor Chong, Xia Huang, and the ancient emperor. Emperor Chong completed the first systematic integration of the art of concocting elixirs in the history of the human clan. He laid the foundation for all the later generations. Xia Huang forged the most powerful Dharma treasure in the history of the divine land, Ding of Shenzhou. As for the great formation of longevity in the South Pole that the ancient emperor created, one of its great uses was to assist in concocting elixirs. In terms of the Tao of formations, this is the most suitable formation to assist in concocting elixirs. The few times Xiao Yin had come to the ancient longevity world, although out of courtesy, he did not specially study the grand longevity formation of the South Pole. But with his current level of cultivation and his high attainments in the Tao of alchemy, with the two combined, he was able to gain some benefits from it. It was a reference for his alchemy skills to increase. Li Yuanfang closed his eyes. After a while, he opened his eyes again and nodded. Although it's like looking at flowers through the fog, this formation is indeed very useful. It has a very strong fertility effect. It is not inferior to our sex yin and yang life and death formation, which can transform the aura of death into life. It is not as strong and fast as the transformation of life and death. However, it is continuous, as if it is endless and longer. The disciples continued to communicate with each other through their transcendence energy. Lin Feng's god of war doppelganger also walked side by side with Gu Cheng. Gu Cheng pondered and said, Sect Leader Lin, I have something to tell you. Taishu Temple's temple head Yin Nan Lai, together with Grand Elder Wu Mengqi and Lord Qing Ning, the current Empyrean Walker Lin Daohan, and a group of juniors will also be visiting the ancient longevity world today. Hearing this, Lin Feng turned to look at Gu Cheng. Gu Cheng continued, according to Taishu Temple, they are here to exchange their knowledge on the Tao of alchemy with our tribe. He paused for a while, then continued. Our tribe has a lost remnant of a pill recipe from Taishu Temple. This is also the purpose of their visit. Although that was what he said, Gu Cheng's meaning was actually very clear. If it was really just for the exchange of pill recipes and alchemy, then Lord Qingming alone would be enough. At this time, Yin Nanlai personally led a team to the ancient longevity world. His purpose was self-evident. However, for some reason, none of the 4 Taishu elders came. However, it was hard to say whether they had something to do and couldn't leave, or whether they were temporarily biding their time. After all, the ancient longevity world was not like the desolate ancient star ocean. If they really want to come, it would be much easier. With a fellow Taoist from Taishu Temple as a witness to this joyous event between our two sides, they are truly the most suitable guests. It will add to the festive atmosphere. Lin Feng smiled and looked forward. A majestic city appeared on the horizon. In the middle of the city, there was a palace. Although it was not dazzling, it was dignified and imposing. It had a kind of ancient style that was not commonly seen nowadays. Naturally, it exuded a dignified atmosphere, like a royal palace. Chapter 1068. The group entered the city and came to the front of the palace. Lin Feng and the others could feel many auras and fluctuations of consciousness along the way, which were filled with curiosity. However, the Gu clan was clearly well educated. When the clansmen learned that Lin Feng and his disciple had come, they were curious, but they did not panic, nor did they rush to the streets to watch. Many people stood before the palace. All of them possessed profound cultivations, and they revealed the formidable strength and resources that the Gu clan had accumulated for many years. Even though they were limited to a corner of the world, and it was difficult for them to recover the flourishing atmosphere they had during the ancient times, they still couldn't be underestimated. The people gathered here were naturally the elites of the Gu clan. Even some of the young people with low cultivation were full of spirit and energy, displaying a good appearance and deep potential. In the center of the crowd was a middle-aged man. He was not very tall, but wherever he stood, that place seemed to be the center of the ancient longevity world. He looked ordinary and unremarkable, but as he breathed, the spirit qi of the entire dimensional world seemed to be swallowed by him. Zhu Yi looked at him, his gaze becoming more serious. Then you should be Miss Zhen Er's father, the current leader of the Gu clan, Senior Gu Jun, right? Xiaoyan nodded. That's right. This middle-aged man was extremely handsome, and there were some similarities between his eyebrows and Xiao Zhener's. Even now, he looked like a very handsome man, and the hardships of time only added to his charm. He wore a simple robe, but he had the majesty of an emperor, not as domineering and vigorous as Liang Pan and Qin Emperor Shiryu, but more distant and profound. When Lin Feng saw him, he smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Gu, for coming to personally welcome me." Gu Jun also smiled. "You are too polite, Taoist Gu." He looked at Xiao Yan, who was beside Lin Feng. Xiao Yan stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Gu." Lin Feng's gaze fell on a white-haired old man beside Gu Jun. The old man's expression was calm as he smiled. "I am Gu Yuan Kai, and I welcome Taoist Gu to the ancient longevity world." "You're welcome, Tao Master Spiritual Awareness." Lin Feng nodded. Other than Gu Jun, Gu Yuan Kai, Gu Cheng, Gu Peng, and Gu Liang, the other members of the ancient emperor's bloodline also stepped forward to pay their respects. There was a young girl in the crowd. She wore a light green dress, and she was slender and elegant. Her slender figure was untainted by even a speck of dust, and she was like a green lotus that had bloomed in the mortal world. She smiled and bowed to Lin Feng. "Elder Lin, welcome to the Holy Cross." Lin Feng sized her up and said with a smile, "Although it took a long time, Miss Zhen Er's success in this trial is really worth celebrating." The girl was Xiao Zhen. She smiled and said, Senior Lin, you flatter me. She looked at Xiao Yan, and their eyes met. Both of them were overjoyed. Even according to the time of the vast thousand world, they hadn't seen each other for several years. Including the time they spent in the Time Grotto, it had been a long time. For Xiao Zhen, if it wasn't because Lin Feng was here and she was worried about being rude, even if it was in front of her father and the other elders of the family, she would have already thrown herself into Xiao Yan's arms and hugged him. Although the two restrained themselves, this scene was naturally seen by Lin Feng, Gu Jun, and the others. Gu Yuankai and Gu Cheng looked at each other and communicated with their divine sense. Gu Cheng smiled and said, a match made in heaven, but also added a lot of trouble for us, Gu Yuankai said calmly. Gu Yuankai said calmly. Gu Cheng glanced at him and said in a similarly calm tone, just from the current point of view, being an ally of the celestial sect of wonders is more worthy of our trust. This has nothing to do with strength, but rather with their daily behavior. In the ancient times, the ruthless bandits rebelled and killed the longevity ancestor. They even hunted the other ancestors and clansmen, but the Taishu temple remained silent. Just because of this, it is hard for me to accept working with them. Hearing this, Gu Yuankai also fell into silence. That year, the tragic war between the two worlds had ended. The ancient emperor was heavily injured in the war against the demon clan, and the ancient clan's experts also suffered heavy casualties. In the end, the ruthless sovereign took the opportunity to kill and depose the ancient emperor and made himself the human sovereign. The ruthless sovereign's position was originally improper, and after he ascended to the throne, he went against the rules, causing the divine land to fall into great chaos and internal wars. The ruthless sovereign also gathered some people around him and fought against the human experts who opposed him. That was also the most turbulent period in the ancient era of the divine land. The period when the ruthless sovereign was on the throne was also the lowest period in the history of the Taishu temple. In the last years of Xia Huang, although Jihuang Xinyuan was defeated when Qiyong died, and the Haoyan mirror, which was not yet complete, was heavily damaged again. After that, the king of the underworld gradually revealed his fangs, and in the battle to depose the king of the underworld, the Haoyan mirror aimed at the human experts of the divine land for the first time. In the end, although it killed the king of the underworld, the Haoyan mirror's recovery was almost indefinitely delayed, and the second-generation temple master of the Taishu temple, who was also the last of the four heroes of the Great Void, Yan Xinghe, died. In the war between the two worlds, when the ancient emperor was seriously injured, the third-generation temple master of the Taishu temple also died. Before the Taishu temple fully recovered, the Haoyan mirror worked together with the ancient emperor to kill the saint emperor of the demon clan at that time, but its recovery was still a long way off. The Taishu temple also entered the weakest period in its history, and the fourth-generation temple master Changyan, who took over the position, chose to stay silent and defend the White Cloud Mountain at the beginning of the ruthless sovereign's rampage. Although his decision bought time for the Taishu temple and the Haoyan mirror to recover, in the last years of the ancient era, the Haoyan mirror aimed at the human experts of the divine land for the second time, and joined forces with the Tianmen to kill the ruthless sovereign, putting an end to the tyranny together. However, such a decision naturally did not make the descendants of the ancient emperor happy. Gu Cheng said calmly, Ancestor Changsheng has already died, and Heavenly Emperor Kong and the Tianmen have not reached their peak yet. If the Taishu temple takes action, it will be difficult for them to do so alone. Although they can keep the ruthless sovereign in check, it will cause the Haoyan mirror to recover slower and slower. This is not wrong, and I am not naive enough to think that the Taishu temple should have fought the ruthless sovereign to protect the ancient race, and no one owes anyone anything. However, an eye for an eye. Since no one owes anyone anything, it naturally doesn't stop me from choosing to support their enemies if I don't like them. What they chose back then was their freedom, and what they choose now is our freedom. Gu Yuankai looked at Lin Feng, who was talking to Gu Jun, and sighed. Times have changed, and time has passed. It is no longer the same as it was in the past. You and I should help the clan leader decide the future of our race, but we should still act rationally and not personally. Gu Chang said indifferently. Rationally speaking, both sides are evenly matched, and it is difficult to tell who is better. At this time, we will naturally have to see who is better or worse. Gu Yuankai shook his head. The key lies in the war between the two worlds. Let's wait and see. As the two were talking, while the Gu people greeted Lin Feng, Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Yang Qing, and Li Yuanfeng also spread their mana. Tang Jun, Yin Wuwei, Lin Tong, Yang Tai, Ying Luojia, Zhou Yunsong, Tan Yunxing, and other junior disciples appear together. A total of 64 profound gate disciples instantly lined up behind Lin Feng and the others, and then bowed to Gu Jun and the others. Greetings, seniors and fellow Taoists. Although little Lin Tong had formed her nascent soul long ago, she still maintained the appearance of a 12 or 13-year-old. She bowed to Gu Jun and the others. But she still secretly winked at Xiao Zhen, and Xiao Zhen couldn't help but smile. Gu Jun and the others smiled and nodded. Profound gate disciples indeed live up to their reputation. They weren't just being polite. From Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, and Gu Cheng to the other primordial divinity realm experts and Gu clansmen, they all looked at Tang Jun and the others with narrowed eyes. This time, the disciples who came with Lin Feng and Xiao Yin to the ancient longevity world didn't have the same cultivation level. There were also junior disciples who were at the foundation establishment stage. In the eyes of Gu Jun and the others, they didn't have any secrets to speak of. Their real age and cultivation level could be seen at a glance. But comparing the two, the Gu people were naturally slightly shocked. Gu Yuankai's white brows slightly furrowed. I remember 10 years ago, when Xianmin Tianzong opened their doors for the third time and held the Kunlun Dharma Assembly. The news was that all direct disciples who cultivated for more than 5 years would all reach the foundation establishment stage. Gu Qing nodded. Indeed. But looking at the cultivation speed of the new generation of direct disciples, it seems that it's even faster than before. Gu Yuankai pondered and said, although there are many people in the vast thousand world, the number of good seedlings suitable for cultivation is still limited. There are also Taishu Temple, the Great Qin Dynasty, and other forces competing. The new generation of direct disciples of Xianmin Tianzong might not be much better than before. It's the difference in nurturing conditions. Gu Chang said slowly. As Xianmin Tianzong's strength continues to grow, their methods and resources to nurture disciples also continue to improve. It seems that the news they receive from Ding of Shenzhou is true. Only a treasure like Ding of Shenzhou can allow the overall average level of the disciples to develop by leaps and bounds again. Gu Yuankai muttered to himself, Xia Huang's Ding of Shenzhou. His gaze swept across Tang Jun, Lin Tong, Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, and Ying Rosa. They're all very young, and they haven't just formed their nascent souls. It's very likely that some of them already have the confidence to break through to the middle stage of Yuanying. Now that they have such magical powers and methods, they can only form their nascent souls even earlier. It's very likely that they haven't cultivated for more than 50 years. He then looked at Yin Wuwei, Tan Yunxing, and the others. They must have reached the peak of the late stage of golden elixir and are only one step away from forming their nascent souls. Even though Gu Yuankai had lived for a long time and had seen many things, he still felt shocked at this moment. An early-stage Yuanying cultivator or a late-stage golden elixir cultivator was nothing to him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that with just a glance, the other party was already a dead man. Gu Yuankai also wouldn't care about a genius who successfully passed the Void Thunder Tribulation within 50 years and formed a Yuanying cultivator. In his long life, he had naturally seen such geniuses, and not just one or two of them. But a group of such outstanding geniuses had appeared in front of him at the same time, and they were all from the same sect, belonging to the first or second generation of disciples of neighboring sections. This caused Gu Yuankai to be moved. Chapter 1069. The appearance of one or two extraordinary talents might be a coincidence, and the accumulation of a large number of talents over the long years could be said to be the foundation of the inheritance. However, the appearance of a group of them in just a few decades was definitely not a coincidence. In the previous generation, the 8 direct disciples of the Celestial Gate of Wonders were all such extraordinary figures. The 4 heroes of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, including Xiao Yan, were even more outstanding, shocking the past and dazzling the present. Gu Cheng's voice sounded faintly. Even the Taishu Temple, from ancient times until now, has never been so prosperous in the cultivation of the younger generation of disciples. After the dual-pupiled individual was killed by Celestial Venerable Huang, Shi Tianhao, it seems that only Chun Xingyu and Guoqiang have recently emerged from Taishu Temple. Our understanding of Taishu Temple is limited. I believe that they have other geniuses, but they probably can't reach the level of Xianmin Tianzong in front of us. Right now, we're not facing all of Xianmin Tianzong's geniuses. Among the younger generation of our clan in recent years, besides Jin'er, there's only Lien Chong. Ninth uncle, there may be a dispute about the strength of the two sides, but there is no doubt that Xianmin Tianzong's potential surpasses that of Taishu Temple. Gu Yuankai's expression was calm. It was naturally impossible for a person like him to be easily swayed by words. He indifferently said, "Hearing about Xianmin Tianzong is not as good as meeting them in person." Today, this old man also has to admit that although I did my best to overestimate Xianmin Tianzong, I still underestimated them in the end. Xianmin Tianzong is even stronger than we expected. In fact, this old man also somewhat agrees with your judgment. If there are no major changes, not much. If you give Xianmin Tianzong 1,000 years, they really might be able to surpass the Taishu Temple. Of course, the premise is that the master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders has a way to deal with the Haotian mirror in its perfect state. I heard that he has reforged his peerless sword. If it continues to develop at this rate, in 500 or 300 years, it might really change the world. Gu Yuankai turned his head to look at Gu Cheng, but who can guarantee that no major changes will occur? Although you and I live in a corner, we both know the situation in the Divine Land. Before the rise of Xianmin Tianzong, the Liang family of Great Zhou's national strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. They were eyeing the land like a hungry whale. If they were given a few thousand years to develop, they might have the opportunity to dominate the Divine Land. But what about now? Gu Yuankai sighed. At the very least, Taishu Temple has experienced the test of time and too many accidents, yet it still stands tall. Compared to Xianmin Tianzong and other factions, it is much more stable. Gu Cheng was also not someone who would easily change his mind after making up his mind. Upon hearing this, his expression was calm. Ninth uncle's words are not without reason, but I still think more highly of Xianmin Tianzong. As for Taishu Temple, I still have the same opinion. That is not a good ally. At least, when there are other similar options, Taishu Temple is not the best choice. Gu Cheng said lightly, just like when the Changsheng ancestor was on the throne, among the past emperors, other than Xiao Huang, the relationship between the Changsheng ancestor and Taishu Temple was the friendliest. But no matter how close they were, no matter how friendly their relationship was, in the end, it was all empty. They could only share blessings, but not trials and tribulations. It is true that most of the allies in the world are like this. But after the Changsheng ancestor deposed the king of the underworld, he shouldered the responsibility of protecting Shenzhou with his wounded body. Thus, Taishu Temple temporarily retreated behind the scenes to recuperate. Because of this, the ancestors of the Aboriginals suffered heavy casualties. The Changsheng ancestor did not fully recover until the last war between the two worlds. Because of the war with the Demon Clan, his old wounds had not yet healed, and new ones were added. This involves a grand strategy. The entire Shenzhou has benefited from the recovery of the Haotian mirror. For everyone, it is a matter of mutual benefit. Strictly speaking, no one owes anyone anything. However, The Chongsheng ancestor and our clan can go through trials and tribulations together, but the Taishu temple cannot. This is actually not their fault. It is just a matter of their own choices. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. But when we make a choice again, under the same conditions, when Taishu temple is not the only choice, I have always believed that people should not trip over the same rock twice. Slowly, Gu Yuankai said, as you said, most alliances and so-called allies are like this. If they were in the same situation, Xianmin, Tianzong might not be able to perform better than Taishu temple. It might even be worse. Hearing this, Gu Cheng said calmly, just like what you said before, ninth uncle, it is also effective in this place. One has already been tested and cannot be relied on, and the other has not been tested. He looked at the white-haired Gu Yuankai beside him. It is hard to say what the current Taishu temple is like, but looking at their previous behavior, they only need valuable or obedient pawns. Of course, they will be happier if they are both valuable and obedient. Gu Yuankai sighed. It is still too early to say. Everything will have to wait until after the war between the two worlds. We will wait and see. Yes, we will wait and see. Hearing this, Gu Qing nodded and didn't say anything else. After greeting each other, Gu Jun said, Faction Leader Lin and your disciples, please rest for now. We will talk in detail tomorrow. Lin Feng smiled. As a guest, please follow the host's wishes. Gu Jun turned to Gu Cheng. Escort Faction Leader Lin and your group to your residence. Arrange a guide for Xianmin, Tianzong's disciples who want to tour Longevity City. If they want to move freely, it is not forbidden. Gu Qing nodded. Yes, brother. Gu Jun looked at Xiao Zhan and sighed. Go with your Uncle Cheng. The marriage was not set yet. Even if it was set, it would only be an engagement, not a wedding. Xiao Zhan blushed a little, but she still nodded and said, Thank you, father. Lin Feng and his group followed Gu Cheng and Xiao Zhan through the palace. Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan walked side by side, following behind Lin Feng and Gu Cheng. Zhan, looking at your appearance, you have completed this trial very successfully? Xiao Yin looked toward Xiao Zhan. The young girl's face revealed a faint smile. Finally completed successfully. Xiao Yin looked at her silently. Xiao Zhan smiled. What is it, brother Xiao Yin? Ever since I left Wuzhou City with Master, I have been looking forward to this day. Xiao Yin said softly. Now, this day has finally come. Following the growth of age and experience, the current Xiao Yin is still as bold and brave as before. Compared to when he was young, he is already much steadier. But Xiao Yin is still Xiao Yin. His current tone is calm and low. Only the emotions contained within are still burning hot. Xiao Zhan lightly smiled and generously held Xiao Yan's hand. Their fingers were tightly intertwined. The girl said softly, Yes, this day will definitely come. And now, it has finally come. The two looked at each other and smiled. There was no need to say anything else. Silently walking for a while, Xiao Zhan suddenly woke up. She turned around and looked at Xiao Yin. Brother Xiao Yin, do you still remember that I was fostered in your home when I was a child? Hearing that, Xiao Yin didn't hurry to reply and instead glanced at Gu Cheng in front of him. Although the two of them were communicating through consciousness and Gu Cheng wouldn't specially come to eavesdrop, Xiao Yin still had to do his best to avoid making things difficult for Xiao Zhan. Xiao Zhan nodded. Not only Uncle Cheng, father and mother also know. Grandpa only said that a powerful figure fostered you there. He was so powerful that he could crush our Xiao family with one finger. So he treated you well and didn't dare to ask about your background. Xiao Yin didn't say anything more. Silently, he looked at Xiao Zhan. Looking back, it was incredible that Xiao Zhan grew up in Wuzhou City's Xiao family, because the difference between the two was too big, like heaven and earth. When I was born, I actually had some illness. It was very special. Even father, Uncle Cheng, and ninth great-uncle felt it was troublesome. Xiao Zhan said softly. It was mainly because I was too young. If I was an adult, father and the others could also cure me. But I was just born, just a baby. If I wasn't careful, I would lose my life. Xiao Yin didn't say anything. He knew that Xiao Zhan hadn't finished. With the cultivation of Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, and Gu Cheng, even if the patient was a baby, as long as it wasn't a fatal illness, they should be able to bring him back to life. After all, the ancient emperor's bloodline was very proficient in the art of alchemy. What Xiao Zhan was going to say next should be the main point. As expected, Xiao Zhan's expression became more serious. She continued, "The root of my illness lies in a piece of gravel collected by the family." She looked at Xiao Yan. That gravel was obtained by the immortal ancestor after he killed the king of the underworld. It was also what the king of the underworld really wanted from the immortal ancient world after he was reborn. The immortal ancestor Xiao mentioned was the ancient emperor of the ancient era. His real name was Gu Changsheng. Before he became the human emperor, he was called the immortal Tao Lord, and some people called him the immortal emperor. At first, there was nothing strange. Even the immortal ancestor could only see that the gravel was related to the nether ocean. Xiao Zhan continued. Then the immortal ancestor was killed by the ruthless bandits. The ancient race was also massacred. A large number of people were sacrificed, and the earliest immortal city that the immortal ancestor built was destroyed. That was why a few of the ancestors hid in the void battlefield and escaped the pursuit of the ruthless bandits. After that, we came to the immortal ancient world and built the immortal city again. But the gravel was still in our hands. In the long years after that, the gravel was unremarkable. There was nothing special about it. Until the middle era of the vast thousand worlds, the gravel suddenly changed. It was filled with evil qi, as if it was connected to the nether ocean. But it was not actually connected, only the aura could be felt. Until now, it was still the same. Xiao Zhan frowned. After I became Yuan Shun, my father allowed me to take a closer look. The aura was extremely evil, as if the world was filled with calamities like the end of the world. Mother came into contact with the gravel when she was pregnant with me. She didn't feel anything at the time, but after giving birth to me, she found out that it was affecting me. Xiao Yan's pupils shrank. Zhan, did you just say the Middle Era? Chapter 1070. Middle Era. Xiao Yan's heart moved slightly, looking at Xiao Zhan. Xiao Zhan nodded. According to the time, it should be during the war between the two worlds when Ji Huang Xinyuan was killed. Hearing this, Xiao Yan was silent. Xiao Zhan looked at him strangely, but did not ask more, continuing, "Later, in order to treat me, Father used a clone to bring me into the divine land to find a solution. One day when I passed by Wuzhou City, I suddenly discovered a strange aura circulating in a family in the city. It was so faint that it was almost undetectable, but it had the effect of treating my congenital chronic illness. After Father searched everywhere, he found the Xiao family, but he was unable to determine where the strange aura came from. That wasn't the aura of magic power, nor was it some trace left behind by some expert. If it wasn't for the strange illness in my body, even Father wouldn't have discovered it." Xiao Zhan recalled and said, "Father originally had the intention of simply bringing your entire family back to the ancient world of immortals, but thinking that I couldn't be in the ancient world of immortals at the same time as that shattered stone, and that the shattered stone was very strange. It couldn't easily leave the ancient world. In addition, he wanted to give me a normal and relaxed childhood. So he left me in the Xiao family in the end. On one hand, I wanted to treat my chronic illness. On the other, I also wanted to investigate the source of that strange aura. It's just that even though my illness was cured later on, I still didn't understand the source of that strange aura. Brother Xiao Yan, after you left to learn from Elder Lin, Father came to Wuzhou City to find me again, but to no avail. He even took out the heavenly disaster remnant stone, but to no avail. My body was already cured, and I no longer feared the heavenly disaster remnant stone. So I followed Father back to the ancient world and officially started cultivating." Xiao Yan, who was in deep thought, came back to his senses. "Heavenly disaster." Xiao Zhan, he said, "When the Middle Era had just changed, that remnant stone once shot out a heart-palpitating red light, showing the two words heavenly disaster. After a short pause, Xiao Zhan continued. Then when I saw Brother Xiao Yin, your evil radiant overlord sword could break the crack in the nether sea, I had a guess. The source of that aura back then perhaps didn't originate from the Xiao family, but from you, big brother Xiao Yin. So after you left Wuzhou later, even if Father brought the remnant stone of heavenly calamity over, he also couldn't find the slightest trace. When this news spread, Father and the others also had the same guess, but they were never able to confirm it. Xiao Yin said softly, all these years, your father has been tacitly approving of our affairs. He has become more and more indulgent, almost to the point of letting us do whatever we want. Is it also related to this matter? He had never doubted Xiao Zhan's feelings, and there was no need for him to doubt it. However, it was hard to tell what his father-in-law was thinking. That's not the case. Xiao Zhan shook her head and looked at Xiao Yin. Brother Xiao Yin, do you remember that I once mentioned to you that 3 years ago in the vast thousand worlds, the great elder of Taishu Temple, Wu Mengqi, once visited our race's ancient longevity world? Xiao Yin nodded. That was the second person of Taishu Temple's great elder level to visit your place after Kai Fengzhou visited the ancient longevity world after the exterminating Xian War. Xiao Zhan said word by word. He can cause the remnant stone of heavenly calamity to resonate. On his body, there is the same fluctuation of the nether sea as the one in Wuzhou City. He once proposed to study the remnant stone of heavenly calamity together with our race and share the harvest, but Father refused in the end. Xiao Yin was a bit surprised and looked at Xiao Zhan. A faint blush appeared on Xiao Zhan's face, but she did not continue speaking. She thought of the scene when she asked her father about it. Gu Jun's expression was kind as he smiled. Silly daughter, that is the dowry I prepared for you. It doesn't seem very expensive now, but I believe it is the most suitable thing. Xiao Zhan was a bit surprised. Father, you agree to my marriage with Brother Xiao Yin? Gu Jun's expression was calm. After a long time, he said softly, if possible, I sincerely hope that your marriage will not involve other factors. But being born in our race, this is very difficult to avoid. In these few years, Xiao Yin, that child, let me see his sincerity and also saw the bearing of the Xian Gate's leader. I can see that they also don't wish for other matters to be involved in your marriage. This is very good, but there are a lot of things that can't be done with just our wishful thinking. Even if both of us want to help you two be together, in the eyes of the outside world, it will still be interpreted differently. Gu Jun lightly stroked Xiao Zhan's hair. As a father, I agree to your marriage. Xiao Yin is a partner that can be entrusted, a partner that is worth accompanying for a lifetime. But as the emperor of a dynasty, the leader of a clan, I still need to be cautious. One thing I can promise is that I will not choose other people for you to marry. However, you may have to wait. Xiao Zhan heard this and nodded. Father, I understand. I will not make things difficult for you, but no matter how long it takes, I will always wait. Gu Jun faintly smiled. Silly daughter, the matter might not be as bad as you think. Father will not interfere or obstruct your interaction with Xiao Yin. Xiao Yin twitched his mouth and said, after all, after the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha went to the Dead Sea and disappeared, when Xiang became the person that the king of the underworld feared the most. He was still alive, and even though he was stronger than Xiao Huang, he was still as obedient as a sheep. He only dared to show himself when Xiang was gone. How could the king of the underworld feel at ease when such a person's life and death became a mystery? But it seems that before his research had much results, he was overthrown and deposed by your family's ancestor in the Taishu Temple, and was beaten to death once. Xiao Yin said in a low voice, there is also a possibility that when Xiang was in the Netherworld Sea, and it was only during the war between the two worlds in the Middle Era that he gained control of the Netherworld Sea, and it just so happened that he had a great battle with Ji Huang Xinyuan. After that, when Xiang was completely destroyed, and he died together with Ji Huang Xinyuan. But when the king of the underworld was hiding in the dark, waiting for his resurrection and plotting, his understanding of the netherworld sea also deepened. That was why he could break open the crack in the netherworld sea and disturb your ancient longevity world. And the Taishu Temple believed that they also try to find out the truth behind Wen Qiang's disappearance in the ancient era, or maybe because of Wen Qiang's legacy, they also had some understanding of the netherworld sea. At this point, Xiao Yin laughed bitterly. The only problem that I still don't understand is myself. Xiao said, maybe after coming into contact with the Heaven Disaster Stone, Big Brother Xiao Yin, you might know more. The group walked and settled down under the guidance of Gu Cheng and the others. Although Gu Jun said that everyone had their own way of doing things in Longevity City, Xianmin Tianzong and the others naturally would not be so rude. Even if they wanted to go out, they would ask the people of the ancient clan to accompany them. But most people still chose to rest in their rooms, and at most, they would visit each other's houses. At this moment, Duanmu Hong was in Master Tang Jun's room, and he asked curiously, Master, when do you think those ancient clan people who are looking for trouble with us will come? Tang Jun frowned slightly. Why would there be ancient clan people looking for trouble with us? Which one of you is in trouble? No, Master, when you were chatting with Grandmaster in the past, you said that if Grandmaster comes to propose marriage, there will definitely be one or a few clan brothers who have always been secretly in love with the ancient clan princess, Dao venerate Qingyi, and think that they are very powerful to provoke Grandmaster and look for trouble with him. As Duanmu Hong spoke, he gestured with his hands. Moreover, there will be elders from the ancient clan jumping out to look at Grandmaster and obstruct the marriage between Grandmaster and Dao venerate Qingyi. They will even say things like how a toad wants to eat swan meat. The more Tang Jun listened, the weirder his expression became. In another quiet room, Lin Feng and Xiao Yin sat opposite each other, staring at each other. After a long while, Lin Feng held his forehead weakly. Brat, what exactly have you taught your disciples? Chapter 1071. Lin Feng and Xiao Yin naturally wouldn't be so bored as to eavesdrop on the conversation between their juniors. However, with their divine senses spread out, the conversation between Tang Jun and Duanmu Hong naturally fell into their ears. Other words were like the wind that blew past without leaving a trace. It wouldn't attract the attention of Lin Feng and Duanmu Hong at all, but once the words "the aboriginals are looking for trouble" entered their ears, Lin Feng and Duanmu Hong were naturally more attentive as seniors. However, after hearing Duanmu Hong's words clearly, Lin Feng was instantly speechless. He looked at Xiao Yin and said, Aren't these the words Master used to joke with you? Did you tell them? Xiao Yin also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I only told Tiansong, treating it as a joke. Just like the relationship between Lin Feng and Xiao Yin, the master-disciple relationship between Xiao Yin and Tang Jun was also very relaxed. They often joked and teased each other. Who knew that little Duanmu Hong, who was at the side, would firmly remember it in his heart and treat it seriously? At this moment, Tang Jun looked at Duanmu Hong's serious and somewhat worried gaze. For a moment, he also had the urge to look up at the sky and cry against the wind. He had always been unyielding towards outsiders, but towards his own people, he never had a temper, especially when Duanmu Hong was his personal disciple. At this moment, he could only smile bitterly and say, That was a joke between Grandmaster and Master. Duanmu, don't take it seriously. Fake. Duanmu Hong blinked his eyes, instantly confused. Tang Jun sighed. Dao venerate Qingye is peerless in her generation, like a banished immortal. There are probably many people who secretly admire her. This is true, but no one would go and challenge your Grandmaster. Your Grandmaster's magical powers are astonishing. Back then, when he first formed his primordial soul, he was already able to fight against experts of the Path Integration realm. This isn't us bragging, it's your Grandmaster's actual battle achievements. There are quite a few people who know about this. This matter isn't a secret, and it's very easy to verify. When your Grandmaster came to propose marriage, how could the people of the ancient immortals realm not investigate the most basic things? Putting aside the fact that there might not be anyone in the ancient immortals world who dares to challenge your grandmaster, even if there is an expert in the younger generation who can challenge a grandmaster, he definitely wouldn't foolishly come to find trouble. Duanmu Hong blinked his eyes. Why? Tang Jun extended his thumb and pointed at the room behind him. Because this time, it is not your grandmaster who has come to visit. Rather, it is your great-grandmaster who has personally come to visit the ancient longevity plane. Our sect is the one who has come to visit the ancient longevity plane. Before coming here, we had already informed each other. To be honest, if your grandmaster is a lone cultivator, and if the experts of the ancient immortals world come to propose marriage without knowing his background, then the previous joke might become reality. But in this situation, it's really just a joke. As for the elders of the ancient immortals world opposing the marriage between your grandmaster and Dao Venerate Qingye, I'm afraid that will happen, but it's not because of a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. It involves a higher level, and it's no longer just a matter of marriage. As for the elders of the ancient immortals world opposing the marriage between your grandmaster and Dao Venerate Qingye, I'm afraid that will happen, but it's not because of a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. It involves a higher level, and it's no longer just a matter of marriage. As the first seat true disciple of Xiao Yin, Tang Jun, who is now a Yuaning cultivator, would naturally come into contact with more and more information of a higher level. But even so, it's a matter of private communication within the ancient immortals world. It won't be brought to the surface and openly cause trouble for your grandmaster. After Tang Jun finished speaking, Duanmu Hong asked, not really understanding why. Tang Jun's tone was indifferent. Because our master is Xianmin Tianzong, and because your great-grandmaster is the master of the Taoist sect, and your grandmaster is the head elder of our sect. There are only 3 circumstances in which your grandmaster's marriage proposal could cause the ancient immortals to retaliate violently. Tang Jun raised 3 fingers at Duanmu Hong and said calmly, First, we have a feud with the ancient immortals. Second, if Dao Venerate Qingye isn't willing, your grandmaster wants to take her as his wife. Third, us juniors in the ancient world of immortals have caused a great disaster that would immediately cause both sides to have a blood feud. As long as it's not these 3 circumstances, even if the ancient emperor of the ancient world of immortals joins our opposing side, our visit this time will at most be tactfully rejected. There won't be any unpleasantness on the surface. He patted Duanmu Hong's little head. Of these 3 circumstances, which do you think is close to it? Duanmu Hong shook his head. None of them are close to it. It's the third. Disciples and brothers, you have to be careful. He thought for a moment and said, but we can't be reckless. They can also use a formal challenge or ask for advice to find grandmaster. Tang Jun smiled. That's right. They're worth teaching. They can, but it won't be today, because they have already done so. This is the first time your grandmaster has come to the ancient world of immortals. Your grandmaster isn't, and neither am I. The few elders of the Gu clan have secretly probed your grandmaster many times. It's just that they all came in high spirits and returned in disappointment. Even the rising talents of the ancient immortals in the Yuanying stage, I have fought with them more than once or twice. Duanmu Hong's interest was instantly piqued. Master, did you win or lose? Tang Jun thought for a moment. I won all of them, but it's not like there aren't any experts in the younger generation of the ancient world of immortals. Dao Venerate Qingye's Jr. is called Gu Lianxing, and he's quite outstanding. Speaking up to here, Tang Jun rubbed his chin. Now that you mention it, I remember that Gu Lianxing said that he couldn't beat me in a fight of magical powers. The next time we meet, he wants to compete with me in alchemy. While Tang Jun and Duanmu Hong were talking, Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan with a smile that wasn't a smile. Xiao Yan laughed awkwardly. Child's words carry no harm. Child's words carry no harm. Lin Feng used his finger to point at him. Jokes have to be made according to the situation and the person. When I told you those jokes, did I do in front of Yuan Feng? Xiao Yan sighed. At this time, the door opened and Xiao Zhe walked in holding little Lin Tong's hand. Little Lin Tong's longing for Xiao Zhan was no less than Xiao Yan's. Once they arrived at the residence, she immediately occupied Xiao Zhan and chattered nonstop. When she saw Xiao Yin, the little girl giggled and said, "Daddy, don't be angry. I will return mother to you now." "It's godfather, not daddy," Xiao Yin said in a bad mood. Little Tong was getting older and more mature. She was very obedient in other things, but this was the only problem that Xiao Yin corrected countless times. She always turned a deaf ear to. Now, Xiao Yin was a little numb. Fortunately, when there were outsiders around, little Lin Tong would be more restrained. Most of the time, she would call him master. Xiao Zhan, and Lin Tong bowed towards Lin Feng together. Xiao said softly, "Senior Lin, not even 2 hours after you enter the ancient realm, the head of the Taishu Temple, Yin Nanlai, brought along the Grand Elder Lord Qing Ning, the Grand Elder Wu Mengqi, the disciple of the head of Yin Temple, the current world wayfarer of Taoism, Lin Daohan, as well as a group of junior disciples to visit the ancient realm of longevity. Ninth Grand Uncle has already gone to welcome them. I believe they will arrive at Longevity City soon." Lin Feng smiled slightly. "It's fine. I can roughly guess why they are here." When Yin Nanlai and his group came to visit, Gu Jun and the others of the ancient world also received them and arranged their accommodations. After a brief conversation, the people of Taishu Temple went to their accommodations to rest. Similarly, they would officially discuss matters the next day. On the second day, Gu Peng came to invite them. Lin Feng brought Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Yang Qing, and Li Yuanfang to the central main hall of the palace. The current ancient emperor Gu Jun and the other 2 big shots of the ancient world of longevity, Gu Cheng and Gu Yuankai, were already waiting in the main hall. After the 2 sides greeted each other and sat down, Lin Feng smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Gu, my purpose for coming here has already been mentioned in our previous communication. This time, I have no other intentions. My eldest disciple, Xiao Yin, wants to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. His parents died when he was young, and his grandfather is old. So I, as his master, have come to propose marriage on his behalf. I hope the 3 Taoists of the ancient world can forgive me for my lack of manners." Xiao Yin sat below him and did not say much. He left everything to Lin Feng. Xiao Zhan also sat silently on the opposite seat. After looking at Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan, Lin Feng continued, "By coincidence, my eldest disciple and your daughter grew up together. They were childhood sweethearts, and after they grew up, they fell in love with each other. Now, they have both become primordial divinities and live as long as the heavens. In the future, they will support each other and live together. This is also a beautiful story." Gu Jun said, "Master Xianmin is too polite. Your daughter is much better than my daughter." Gu Qing didn't say anything. Slowly, Gu Yuankai said, "Both of them have become primordial divinities and have a stable foundation. But they're still young. For mortals, they are not young. But for us cultivators, they have just stepped on the path of human growth. It is naturally a good thing that they love each other. But the years are long, so they should spend more time together. After the accumulation of time, it will be beneficial for them to help each other in the future." He turned around and looked at Xiao Zhan kindly. He smiled and said, "Zhan, don't blame me. It's just that we need to spend a long time together, not a fiery passion. It's not that I don't think highly of you and Xiao Yin. I just hope that you can go further and smoother in the future." When a cultivator's age reached a certain point, their age was no longer the same as that of mortals. There was no limit to their lifespan. When a cultivator was immersed in cultivation, they might spend a few months, a few years, a few decades, or even hundreds or thousands of years. Whether a person's mind was mature or not depended on the increase of experience and knowledge, not purely on the increase of age. From the perspective of the growth of experience and emotional intelligence, there was not much difference between a person cultivating in seclusion for 50 years and sleeping for 50 years. So, it was not wrong to say that Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan were young. But Gu Yuankai's words were just a facade. Chapter 1072. The meaning of Gu Yuankai's words was actually implicitly expressing that Xianmin Tianzong's rise was too short. Although he was already extremely powerful, there were still many things that needed time to verify. Hearing Gu Yuankai's words, Lin Feng was not angry. He looked at Gu Jun with a slight smile. What does fellow Taoist Gu think? Gu Jun's expression was calm. Slowly, he said, the growth of one's experience lies in how many things one has experienced, not just the length of time. Gu Yuankai frowned slightly and did not say anything. Gu Qing also did not speak. Gu Jun looked at Lin Feng. However, my daughter is stubborn and mischievous. She may cause trouble for your sect. Your daughter is outstanding, so there are many people who yearn for her. This is human nature. Lin Feng smiled. He opened his palm and a stream of light flew out, floating in front of Gu Jun and the other two. It was a piece of paper that flickered with a faint radiance. There were some words written on the paper. Gu Jun and the other two were somewhat stunned at first, but when they saw the contents of the paper, their pupils shrank slightly. Gu Jun and Gu Cheng looked at Gu Yuankai. Gu Yuankai did not move. He stared at the words on the paper for a long time, calculating and deducing in his heart. After a while, he turned his head and nodded at Gu Jun and Gu Cheng. Sect leader Lin, this pill formula. Gu Jun turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled slightly. It was an accidental gain. I deduced it. Fellow Taoists, you're all great alchemists. Please correct me. Gu Jun asked slowly, Sect leader Lin, did you just say that it was deduced? You did not obtain a ready-made pill formula? Gu Yuankai and Gu Cheng also trembled slightly, their eyes fixed on Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression did not change at all. He smiled and nodded. I have made a fool of myself in front of you. Gu Jun's expression did not relax. Instead, it became much more solemn. We trust sect leader Lin's words. But since it is so, we must ask one more thing. Sect leader Lin, what is your intention in deducing this pill formula? Lin Feng didn't think much of Gu Jun's question because it was a normal reaction. If he was in Gu Jun's position, he would have the same thought. I don't have any special intentions. It's just that the effects of this Dan are quite good. I like it, so I derived this recipe for future use. It's that simple. Lin Feng said indifferently. To me, it's just a pill recipe, a type of pill. It doesn't affect the overall situation at all. Today, I'm showing the pill recipe to the three fellow Taoists. Firstly, I hope that the three great alchemists can correct me. Secondly, it's my first time visiting your esteemed place. It's just a small greeting gift. The three fellow Taoists don't need to worry too much. Gu Jun and the other two fell silent at the same time. Lin Feng's tone was calm, but it revealed a convincing aura. The so-called meeting gift was literally what it meant. In other words, this pill recipe that had a great origin and could shake the entire divine land was not counted by Lin Feng as a betrothal gift to Xiaoyan. In the hands of the Gu race, this pill recipe had a special meaning and function that exceeded the value of the recipe itself. The three leaders of the Gu race began to communicate with their consciousness. After a long time, they finally calmed down. Lin Feng and the others were not in a hurry. Silently, they sat in the hall and waited. Sect leader Lin, you're exaggerating. If that's the case, then our race and I are being too impolite. Gu Jun shook his head slowly and glanced at Gu Yuankai. After a moment of silence, Gu Yuankai put away the recipe in front of him. At this point in the conversation, the direction of the conversation suddenly changed. Whether it was Lin Feng or Gu Jun, they no longer talked about the marriage between Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhe. Instead, they chatted about cultivation techniques and ancient and modern stories. The atmosphere of the conversation suddenly relaxed. Xiao Zhen, and Xiao Yin looked at each other. There was no ecstasy in their eyes, but they both let out a sigh of relief. At this point, the marriage was not really set, but the possibility of it being rejected had been completely cut off. The only suspense was when and under what circumstances the matter would be completely settled. Gu Jun looked at Lin Feng. Sect leader Lin, Taishu Temple's Yin monastery master has come to visit. I haven't talked to him in detail. However, during our short conversation yesterday, he mentioned something. What he meant was that our three families should sit down and talk together. Xianmen Tianzong came first. Unless Gu Jun had already made up his mind to go to Taishu Temple, he would naturally meet Xianmen Tianzong and the others first. Lin Feng nodded calmly. I have a general idea of Monastery Master Yan's intentions. If fellow Gu doesn't mind, then I have no objections. Let's talk later. He stood up. My disciples and I will return to our residence first. After fellow Gu and the others from Taishu Temple have talked, our three families will meet again. Unless the aboriginals completely went to Xianmen Tianzong, it was impossible for them to invite the people from Taishu Temple over when Lin Feng and the others were present. That would be equivalent to the two families working together, and Taishu Temple would be the guests. Lin Feng didn't want to make things difficult for Gu Jun, so he took the initiative to leave. Although Lin Feng was used to the power of unity, he had never been interested in things like marriage alliances. The result of the previous conversation was enough to satisfy Lin Feng. He didn't care about the marriage between Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan because he wanted a rope in the aboriginals. On the contrary, it was precisely because of the marriage between Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan that he wasn't so enthusiastic about winning over the aboriginals. He personally came to the ancient immortals world to prevent some blind people from messing up his eldest disciple's marriage. Winning over the aboriginals was more to prevent Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan from being stuck in the middle if something happened in the future. Although he would calmly weigh the pros and cons most of the time, Lin Feng would sometimes be capricious and emotional when it came to a specific matter that involved certain people. However, he didn't plan to change himself just because of this. After Lin Feng and the others returned to their residence, they received another invitation from Gu Jun and the others the next day. Once again, they went to the central hall. This time, the three parties Xianmen Tianzong, the ancient immortals world, and Taishu Temple would meet and talk. Seeing Yin Namlai again, Lin Feng exchanged a glance with him. The two nodded in greeting. Slowly, Yin Namlai said, Sect Leader Lin, how have you been? It's been a long time. Lin Feng smiled. Leader Yin, it's been a long time too. Yin Namlai had a head of long black hair, but his temples were as white as snow. He looked to be in his 20s or 30s, and his expression was calm and indifferent. On either side of him, one on the left and one on the right, was a spirited young man with a hint of arrogance and a calm but slightly serious old man. The former was the leader of the radical faction of Taishu Temple, Wu Mengqi, and the other leader, Kai Fengzhou. They were all descendants of one Qiyang, the head of the Great Void Four. Wu Mengqi was the person in Taishu Temple who could break open the crack in the Netherworld Sea and draw upon the power of the Netherworld Sea. When he opened his eyes, he could vaguely see thousands of calamities appearing in the Netherworld Sea, as if it was the end of the world. He first looked at Lin Feng, then slowly moved to Xiao Yan. And the other old man is the conservative elder of the Void Temple, Dao, Lord Qingning. He is also the number one alchemist of the Void Temple, and, at the same time, is also known by many as the current number one alchemist of the human cultivation world in the entire Divine Continent. Wu Mengqi and Lord Qingning were both members of Taishu Temple's Supreme Elders Guild. Beside the young Lord Qingning was a young man dressed in green. His appearance gave people a very contradictory feeling. His facial features looked unusually ordinary, but he gave people a strange feeling of handsomeness that was unforgettable. As time passed, people felt that the ordinariness of his body was constantly fading away, and his whole person became more and more handsome. He was like a fine jade that had been broken for many years, and finally the outer layer of stone was gradually peeling off, revealing its original appearance. When Lin Feng saw him, he nodded and said, "Your cultivation is getting more profound." The young man cupped his hands and bowed to Lin Feng. "Master of Celestial Sect is too kind. I don't deserve it." This young man was the Taishu Temple's current Empyrean wayfarer, Lin Daoan. As for what Gu Jun and the other two had discussed with the people of Taishu Temple after they left yesterday, Lin Feng and his disciple naturally did not know. Whether it was the expressions of Gu Jun and the other two or the people of Taishu Temple, they did not reveal any clues. However, Lin Feng could still vaguely feel that Gu Jun and the other two's perception of him seemed to have changed a little. This was not because they had found any real clues, but purely because of the subtle perception of their spiritual consciousness. It was very mysterious. As one of Lin Feng's disciples, Zhu Yi, who had the most agile spirit and the strongest spiritual perception, also frowned secretly, sensing something different. Fellow Gu, tell me that Master of Yin Temple has something that he hopes the three of us can discuss together. Lin Feng's face did not show the slightest hint of emotion. Although he still did not know what kind of medicine Taishu Temple had given him, it did not affect him much at the moment. He could feel that Gu Jun and the others did not have a change of heart. It was just that they had some doubts in their hearts. Hearing Lin Feng's question, Gu Jun did not say much. His gaze also turned to Yin Namlai. Yin Namlai nodded. What I want to talk about is about a person. He is related to Xianmin Tianzong, the ancient immortal's world, and my temple. He is also related to the entire human cultivation world in the Divine Land. This person is the resurrected king of the underworld who has returned to the world in the current era. Hearing the name of the king of the underworld, Lin Feng and Gu Jun nodded together. He is indeed related to all three of us. Silently, Yin Namlai said, if the king of the underworld is not eliminated, he is a huge hidden danger to the entire Divine Land, especially at a crucial time in the war between the two worlds. If he suddenly acts up, it is very likely that it will cause irreversible consequences. Lin Feng looked at Yin Namlai. Do you know his exact whereabouts? Yin Namlai shook his head slowly. His exact whereabouts are uncertain, but it is certain that his whereabouts are related to the underworld sea. The disciples of the king of the underworld have all hidden themselves very well. However, among them, the most mysterious one, Yuming Daoist, seems to have been hiding in the underworld sea all these years, planning for the king of the underworld. Gu Jun frowned slightly. I believe that Yuming Daoist has the ability to enter the underworld sea. However, if he has been hiding in the underworld sea all this time, how did he do it? Calamities and tribulations are everywhere in the underworld sea. If he is always in the underworld sea, not to mention whether he can resist it, even if he can, all his energy will be used to resist the power of the underworld sea. I'm afraid he will not have the time to do anything else, unless Yuming Dao's strength far exceeds our expectations. Lin Feng lightly tapped his fingers on the armrest of his chair. Shaking his head, he said, I'm afraid there is another key. Chapter 1073. Lin Feng and Gu Jun looked at Yin Namlai, as well as Wu Mengqi beside him. Yin Namlai also turned to look at Wu Mengqi, nodding slightly. Wu Mengqi said, within the Netherworld Sea, it is very possible that there are some worlds within worlds, some smaller worlds that are contained within the Netherworld Sea. That explains it. Gu Jun nodded, then said, however, the formation of worlds within worlds is usually the result of special external forces, and not the natural formation of the original world. Lin Feng looked at Wu Mengqi. Fellow Taoist Wu, can you enter these worlds within worlds? Wu Mengqi was silent for a moment, then answered, I can't enter. I can only sense their existence. Yin Namlai said, the spatial boundaries of the Netherworld Sea are not as chaotic as the empty sea, but the situation within is more complicated, and it is more difficult to find out. Lin Feng and Gu Jun both understood what he meant. They had a general understanding of the Netherworld Sea. It seems that Taishu Temple's exploration of the Netherworld Sea is still a step behind the king of the underworld. Lin Feng and Xiao Yin looked at each other, both understanding. In the ancient era, they may have also diligently searched for Wenqiang's whereabouts, but the direction of their exploration was deviated, and their focus was not on the Netherworld Sea. Our current understanding of the Netherworld Sea is most likely from Wenqiang's legacy after the war between the two worlds in the Middle Era. Gu Jun pondered. Suddenly his eyes flashed, and he raised his head to look at Lin Feng and Yin Nanlai. Please forgive me. Something has happened in our clan, and we need to deal with it first. We will discuss the matter of the king of the underworld tomorrow. What do you think? Lin Feng and Yin Nanlai nodded. Fellow Taoist Gu is too polite. Please go ahead. Xianmin, Tianzong, and Taishu Temple were led back to their residences by Gu Cheng and Gu Yuankai. After they left, Gu Jun's gaze became more serious, and his figure disappeared from the main hall. When he reappeared, he was already in a side hall, where Gu Peng was waiting. The heavenly affliction rock suddenly moved? Gu Jun asked in a deep voice. Gu Peng nodded his head. Yes, it was only for a short moment, but the abnormality was quite intense. It felt like there was a change in the netherworld sea. Gu Jun arrived at the palace where the ancient longevity plain stone of heavenly calamity was stored. There, within the sealed world of magic power, a stone fragment hovered in the air, flashing with a red luster. It gave off a feeling of endless calamity, an ominous feeling. Gu Jun did not stare at the broken stone. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the ceiling of the palace. After a long time, he slowly said, Let Jin bring that child Xiao Yan here. Gu Peng asked. Then the master of the celestial sect of wonders, Gu Jun, said, Naturally, there's no need to hide it. If sect Master Lin knows, he probably won't come with us. After receiving the invitation, Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile, You can go with Miss Jin I won't be going. Yes, master. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Yan nodded his head and bowed to Lin Feng together with Xiao Zhen before leaving the room. Lin Feng's fingers lightly tapped the armrest of the chair as he pondered. The netherworld sea has formed a world within a world, and there might be more than one. Are all of these worlds within a world under the control of the king of the underworld and Taoist Yu Ming, or only a portion? Xiao Yan followed Xiao Zhen to the palace where the heavenly calamity rock was stored. Gu Jun and Gu Peng were waiting there. Xiao Yan looked at the stone fragment hovering in the air, and his eyes narrowed. After greeting Gu Jun and Gu Peng, Xiao Yan came before the sealed world of magic power. Gu Jun said, The sealed world will not be lifted. You will need to enter by yourself. Xiao Yan nodded his head and immediately stepped in. As soon as he stepped into the sealed world, Xiao Yan's body stiffened slightly as he stared at the heavenly calamity rock, unable to move his eyes away. The heavenly calamity rock shot out a dazzling red light that condensed into the word heavenly calamity in the void. It made people's hearts palpitate as if it was a true calamity of the world. Xiao Yan stared at the heavenly calamity rock, his eyes flashing with light. He reached out his palm, and the evil glory overlord sword was already in his hand. A blood-red crack appeared on the door-like broad body of the sword. It was as if a sleeping demon god had awakened and opened its eyes. In those eyes, the netherworld sea's calamities and tribulations kept surging as if they were about to gush out. However, Xiao Yan did not lose his mind. He used his own power to control the crack on the evil glory overlord sword to not continue expanding, even maintaining it in a relatively stable state. Even the vicious calamities and tribulations were suppressed and could not come out. However, the crack on the netherworld sea was clearly resonating with the heavenly calamity rock at this moment. Both of them hummed and trembled. Xiao Yan directly manifested his primordial spirit, which transformed into a huge Tai Chi diagram that was completely formed by flames of various colors. As the Tai Chi diagram revolved, rays of red light started to gush out from it, and together transformed into a crimson-red pillar of light. It had the same aura as the heavenly calamity rock, filled with calamity and inauspiciousness. As for the aura of calamity of the heavenly calamity rock, it gradually calmed down and regained its calm. The red light that shot out from the word heavenly calamity also gradually disappeared. After a long time, the flaming Tai Chi diagram manifested by Xiao Yan's primordial spirit recovered its human form. Xiao Yan closed his eyes with a calm expression. He sat cross-legged in front of the heavenly calamity rock and formed a strange seal with his hands. Upon seeing this, Gu Peng frowned slightly and looked at Gu Jun. Imperial brother, this seal is very strange. I can't tell its origin at all. It doesn't seem like any orthodoxy in the divine land that has something to do with it. It is also different from the Xianmin Tianzong's direct line of inheritance. However, Xianmin Tianzong's orthodoxy is mysterious. I can't be sure. Gu Jun said, just from what we know, it is indeed different. He paused for a moment and then said, Xianmin Tianzong's orthodoxy divine ability is indeed mysterious. As Gu Jun spoke, his gaze turned to Gu Peng and Xiao Zhe. Yesterday, when I was talking with the head of the Taishu Temple, Yin Namlai, he mentioned something. The orthodoxy divine ability of the Xianmin sect's master actually fused the human race's cultivation method with the demon race's cultivation method. Gu Peng and Xiao Zhan were both stunned. How is that possible? Even though the demon race can cultivate Buddhism, it is not a fusion. Yin Namlai would not easily lie about this kind of thing. Gu Jun looked at Xiao Yin, who was meditating with his eyes closed, and said softly, if he tried to lie about this kind of thing, then Yin Namlai would not only have a problem with his character, but also with his intelligence. At the same time, it would be an insult to Gu Jun's intelligence. Gu Peng murmured, what is the Xianmin sect's master thinking about? Does he want to be the master of the divine land and infinite wasteland domain? I really don't know if this is madness or boldness. Gu Jun shook his head. I don't think so. Gu Peng and Xiao Zhan looked at him curiously. Gu Jun pondered and said, the Xianmin sect's master has a grand plan, or rather, he is full of ambition. There is no doubt about this. But looking at his way of doing things, he is not an arrogant person. Although there are times when he does as he pleases, most of the time, he only acts after planning. I have a vague idea about what he is doing, but I just can't see it clearly. He came back to his senses and turned to Xiao Zhen. He smiled and said, Zhen, don't worry. This will not affect your relationship with Xiao Yin. On the contrary, knowing this matter, although Father has some doubts, but after thinking about it carefully, Father is more optimistic about Xianmin Tianzong. Gu Peng and Xiao Zhan were surprised to hear this. Xiao Zhen looked at her father and said, Father. Gu Jun waved his hand. Let's wait and see. It is still too early to say. Among the high-level experts of the ancient immortal world, Gu Peng and Gu Cheng were more inclined towards Xianmin Tianzong. Hearing this, he laughed and shook his head. The Yin Temple Master and the others of the Taishu Temple probably did not expect that their persuasion would have the opposite effect. Gu Jun said, it is not that they did not expect it. They are just not sure, so they tried. Looking at this matter from different angles, the results will be completely different. People with different styles of doing things will also come up with different opinions. At this point, Gu Jun did not say anything more. He looked at Xiao Yin, who seemed to be meditating. Gu Peng and Xiao Zhen also did not say anything. Their eyes fell on Xiao Yin. After a long time, Xiao Yin slowly opened his eyes. A red light flashed in his eyes. He stood up and came out of the seal world. He came in front of Xiao Zhen, and the other two and bowed to Gu Jun. Thank you, Senior Gu. Gu Jun smiled and shook his head. You two just complement each other. I have also studied this heavenly calamity stone for a long time, but I did not find anything. Today, seeing the resonance between you and it, I know that this item is destined to belong to you. Although Elder Wu of the Taishu Temple can open a crack in the Netherworld Sea on a large scale, this item is useless in his hands. He looked at Xiao Yin. Xiao Yin nodded his head lightly. Then, a red light appeared in his eyes again. It was the same as the heavenly calamity stone. Within the red light, a large number of complicated runes appeared, ancient and mysterious. The red light still flashed, but Gu Jun had already clapped his hands and sighed. The world is full of phenomena. It is indeed too wonderful for words. Xiao Yin said regretfully, it is a pity that we cannot lock onto the position of the Netherworld Sea realm in a short period of time, and the war between the two realms may break out at any time. If we cannot take care of the king of the underworld as soon as possible, or at least heavily injure him, There will always be a hidden danger in the war between the two realms. Gu Jun said, "We can plan for this slowly. Compared to before you entered this hall, we have already taken a big step forward." The group left the hall. Accompanied by Xiao Zhan Xiao Yin returned to where Xianmin Tianzong and the others were staying. On the way back, Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhan hearts suddenly jumped at the same time. They turned their heads to look in the other direction. That is the direction of the Black Spirit Hall. It is the place where our clan's juniors learn to make pills. Xiao Zhan glanced and shook her head. "I am afraid that group of brats are not satisfied with their loss. That is why they dragged Tian Song and the others to compete in pill making again." But a smile appeared at the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth. "But there are still juniors from the Taishu Temple. Interesting. Let's go have a look." Chapter 1074. In the imperial city of Longevity City, the Black Spiritual Palace was the place where the younger generation of the ancient clan learned alchemy. Because of the orthodoxy, almost all of the ancient clan disciples knew alchemy, and their average level was quite outstanding. The ancient clan disciples were in the Black Spiritual Palace when they were young, and there were elders who were in charge of teaching them. As their cultivation grew, their age grew, and their alchemy skills improved, these ancient clan disciples no longer came to the Black Spiritual Palace. Instead, they prepared their own cauldrons and practiced at home. However, the Black Spiritual Palace still prepared many high-quality cauldrons. Among them, there were ordinary cauldrons and cauldrons for the young disciples to practice, but there were also excellent treasures. There were even cauldrons at the level of Yuan's spirit magic treasures. However, such treasures were naturally not something that the younger generation disciples could come into contact with on a daily basis. Xiao Yin and Xiao Shen entered the Black Spiritual Palace and saw that there was a rather large hall in the center of the hall. There were many seats around the hall, surrounding a platform in the center. On the platform, there was a huge purplish-red cauldron. This is the pill furnace that the elders of the Gu clan normally use to demonstrate and explain during lectures. Xiao Yin swept a glance and secretly nodded his head. Compared to the outer sky core furnace, it is only slightly inferior. Placed here, although it is impossible for it to be inferior, it is definitely not a treasure of the Gu clan. The power of tradition is indeed powerful. In this aspect, the ancient emperor's heritage is quite deep. He looked around and saw that at the edge of the large hall, there were doors on the wall. Each door represented a quiet room. Xiao Yan's nose twitched slightly. He knew that there was a small cauldron in each quiet room. It must be for the ancient clan disciples to practice. There was a fragrant medicinal fragrance coming from each quiet room, but there was also a pungent smell of burnt things. The two smelled even worse when they were mixed together. However, Xiao Yin smiled. When he first came into contact with alchemy, there was also a situation where a good cauldron of medicine was turned into waste. Under his Fan Tianya, most of the disciples in Xianmin Tianzong who were talented in the way of alchemy, or disciples who were passionate about alchemy and alchemy, refining a batch of good pills and refining a batch of useless dregs also happened from time to time. Therefore, this kind of smell was something that Xiao Yin could not be more familiar with. They should be on the second floor. Xiao Zhan said, "The third floor is where the cauldrons are, and the second floor is where most of the cultivators who have made some achievements in the art of alchemy in our clan use when they don't have a proper cauldron. There are better cauldrons than the one on the first floor." Xiao Yin smiled and said, "Today, I can also follow them and broaden my horizons." Xiao Zhan rolled her eyes at him and said, "You are guarding Ding of Shenzhou every day, so stop mocking me. Not to mention the cauldrons on the second floor and the cauldrons on the third floor, even Huanggu Immortal is not as good as Ding of Shenzhou." Huanggu Immortal was the origin spirit of the Huanggu Immortal Cauldron, a Mahayana-level magic treasure owned by the ancient royal family. In terms of alchemy and alchemy, Huanggu Immortal Cauldron was comparable to the Sun-Moon Divine Cauldron of the Taishu Temple and the Yin-Tian Divine Cauldron of the ancient Heavenly Gate. It was one of the best alchemy and alchemy treasures under Ding of Shenzhou. Only in front of her parents and Xiao Yin would Xiao Zhener show such a girly attitude. But towards this Xiao, Yin can only bitterly laugh to himself. Xiao Zhener still doesn't know that he has been close to the divine continent cauldron for many years, and it is only recently that he can barely use it, wanting to perfectly combine his own pill refining skills with a magic treasure. Who knows how long he will have to wait. The two of them went up to the second floor and saw a group of people already standing there in a circle. However, the three groups of people were clearly separated and facing each other. Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhener's cultivation was much higher than theirs, so no one noticed them. It was as if they didn't exist. In the middle of the crowd was a dark green-colored, four-legged, small square cauldron. It looked normal, but Xiao Yin only needed to glance at it to be able to tell that it was a pill cauldron comparable to the outer sky core furnace. Inside the cauldron, there were waves of blue qi that had a special effect on stabilizing the medicinal power. It could greatly increase the success rate of alchemy and prevent the ingredients from being wasted. At this moment, the person standing in front of the cauldron was a handsome young man. Golden flames appeared on his hands, flickering with red and blue light. He freely added them to the dark green square cauldron. Xiao Zhener whispered to Xiao Yin, "It's Lianqing." Xiao Yin nodded his head. He also knew this handsome young man. His name was Gu Lianqing, 1 generation younger than Xiao Zhener. He was the most outstanding young man in the younger generation after Xiao Zhen, heir of the ancient king's bloodline. His talents were all very outstanding, and he was already a nascent soul cultivator. Back then, he fought with Tang Jun and lost to Tang Jun. This time, it was time to compete in alchemy. Tang Jun stood in front of him and silently watched Gu Lianqing add waves of magic power to the cauldron. Moments later, Gu Lianqing shouted, "Go!" His palms slammed on the cauldron, and the blue qi inside the cauldron suddenly spread out. The fragrance of the medicine filled the air, and many wonderful scenes appeared above the cauldron and didn't disappear for a long time. Within the light, the many wondrous scenes gradually converged into a huge lotus flower, and then it bloomed layer by layer. Gu Lianqing revealed a satisfied expression. He waved his sleeve, and the light dissipated, revealing the cauldron below. Silently, there were 12 white pills inside. Xiao Yin gave it a glance and knew that it was a type of medicinal pill known as the energy conversion pill. It is rather common in the entire Great Thousand Worlds and is a medicinal pill used to assist in daily cultivation. Many families and powers have the pill recipe. The celestial sect of Xianmin and the ancient longevity world are the same. For most of the ancient race disciples here, this was the foundation of the foundation. When they first learned alchemy, they would come into contact with this pill, and there was no difficulty in making it. But the problem was that it would take an average nascent soul cultivator an entire day to refine this batch of pills. Naturally, Gu Lianqing couldn't make this pill for a day. In fact, before Xiao Yin went to the palace where the heavenly calamity stone was stored, Tang Jun and the other disciples of Xianmin Tianzong were still resting in their residences. At most, during the time that Xiao Yin was in contact with the heavenly calamity stone, Gu Lianqing invited Tang Jun and the others to compete at this place. In less than half a day, Gu Lianqing was able to refine such a good pill. Gu Lianqing's talent in alchemy was evident. That was because he wasn't fooling around. Normally, the qi reversal pill wouldn't produce a lotus when it came out of the furnace. That was the result of Gu Lianqing infusing his own Tao art essence into the pill. The quality of this batch of qi reversal pills was a level higher than ordinary qi reversal pills. Tan Yinqing, who was standing beside Tang Jun, looked at this scene and softly said, "Less than 2 hours, only a little more than 3/4 of an hour. This speed is too fast, but the quality of the pill seems to be very good. Tang Jun, are you confident?" Tang Jun didn't say anything and just stared at the dark blue square cauldron in a daze. "Don't worry, Tang Jun will be fine," Yin Wuwei said from the side. Fatty has been learning under Xiao Yan's tutelage for many years. The fire attribute Dao technique he cultivates on the side is the Nanming Leaf Fire's Nanming proper technique. Even though his cultivation is still at Aura's core stage, he also has very high attainments in pill refining. Yen Wuwei casually said, I'm not confident. At the very least, I have to wait until I reach the nascent soul realm. However, Tang Jun will definitely be fine. After hearing this, the juniors of the ancient king's bloodline stared at him. Some of the younger children even made faces at him. Yin Wuwei wasn't annoyed and also made a face at the other party, which made the child stomp his feet in anger. An ancient clan's descendant beside Gu Lianqing muttered, What's the use of just boasting? It depends on your actions. Before Brother Lianqing refined the pill, he asked you to familiarize yourself with the clear flow cauldron. Don't tell me you want to familiarize yourself with it again. Brother Lianqing has never used the clear flow cauldron to refine pills before. For the sake of fairness, Gu Lianqing and Tang Jun agreed to use the same cauldron, the same batch of ingredients, and the same recipe that everyone had come into contact with before. The winner would be determined by the quality, quantity, and speed of the pills. First, they would compare quality, then quantity, and finally time. Generally speaking, under the premise of ensuring the quality, the number of pills refined would not affect the speed of the pill. The number of pills refined was mainly determined by the moment of pulling the pill out of the cauldron. The more skillful one was the less wasted materials and the more pills. As for the ancient clan's descendants muttering, Tang Jun turned a deaf ear to it. He only stared at the small, square-shaped clear flow cauldron in a daze. Yixin Hui stood beside his master, Yang Tai, and secretly transmitted his voice to ask, Master, Martial Uncle Tang should not have cultivated the Nanmingli fire before, right? Will he be at a disadvantage? Yang Tai said calmly, It's true that junior brother Tang hasn't cultivated the Nanming orthodox technique and hasn't grasped the Nanmingli fire. However, I'm sure that if your martial uncle Tang was guilty, he wouldn't be like this. Yixin Hui quietly said, But as far as I know, among your generation, the person with the best alchemy skills should be Martial Aunt Lin. The person he was referring to was naturally little Lin Tong. Don't be fooled by her Lolita appearance, but her alchemy skills could be considered the best among the second-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. That is because your martial Aunt Lin cultivated the Nanmingli fire and mastered the Nanmingli fire. Yang Tai faintly smiled. Purely based on alchemy skills, she might not be better than your martial Uncle Tang. Your martial Uncle Tang's combat ability is one of the strongest among our peers, but perhaps because of his interest, he has spent a lot of energy on the art of alchemy, said the martial Uncle Tang with a smile. While Yang Tai and Yixin Hui were conversing, Tang Jun still did not make a move. He was only staring at the clear, flowing cauldron in a daze. More and more ancient clan disciples frowned. Can he even see a cauldron of pills just by looking? He should really count this time into the alchemy time. Someone muttered in a low voice. Gu Lianqing raised his hand to stop him and shook his head, indicating for him to stop talking. However, this voice naturally fell into everyone's ears. Duan Muhong, who was standing beside Tang Jun, glanced at Gu Lianqing and said, Junior was impetuous. I hope Senior can forgive me. However, when you were refining the chi revolving pill, the last pull of the pill was a bit improper. If you had changed the magic power from 6 void and 4 real to 7 void and 3 real, the effect would have been better and would have been able to obtain 13 pills. The entire second floor of the Black Spirit Temple suddenly became quiet. Chapter 1075. Duan Muhong's words silenced the entire second floor of the Black Spear Hall. All the ancient race disciples and the descendants of the Void Temple looked at him. The ancient clan disciple who spoke first didn't get angry when he saw Duan Muhong, who still looked like a teenager. He merely glanced sideways at him. You should only be at the foundation establishment stage. Can you understand Brother Lianqing's technique? Junior doesn't understand, Duan Muhong answered honestly. Even if he was talented in alchemy and knew many things, the difference in cultivation was too big. He He naturally couldn't see through Gu Yinqing's method of using magic power. At most, he could only guess from the surface. When Duanmu Hong answered like this, many people revealed looks of disapproval. The leader of the Taishu Temple disciples was a handsome youth in white. It was Chun Xingyu. A Taishu Temple disciple beside him shook his head. Xianmen Tianzong is really arrogant. Even a child doesn't know what's important. Duanmu Hong looked at the others strangely and then looked at Yan Wei. But martial uncle, Yin explained it to me. I can understand. Many people smiled and shook their heads. However, there are also a few people who looked at Yan Wei. This fatty hasn't formed his nascent soul yet, but he can understand the technique of the middle-stage Yuanying cultivator, Gu Yinqing. Some of the Gu clan disciples frowned and looked at Gu Yinqing. This was because they noticed that after Gu Yinqing heard Duanmu Hong's words, his expression changed from disapproving to thoughtful. He began to think seriously. More and more people saw him like this, and they couldn't help but feel nervous. They began to seriously think about Duanmu Hong's initial words. Most of the Gu clan's disciples were proficient in alchemy, especially the few led by Gu Yinqing. Although they were juniors in the ancient emperor's bloodline, if they were to go to the outside world, they would all be famous alchemy grandmasters. Now that they put down their prejudices and thought seriously, their hearts moved. They went into deep thought and kept deducing. Especially Gu Yinqing. He could be said to be the most outstanding alchemy genius of the ancient king's younger generation. He could even be considered the most outstanding alchemy grandmaster below the primordial soul realm. Duanmu Hong's words were directed at the problem he had with the alchemy just now. Gu Yinqing was the clearest on whether Duanmu Hong was talking nonsense or not. After thinking about it carefully, Gu Yinqing shook his head and said, "It is not impossible to use the 7 void and 3 corporeal method, but because I am using the Nanmingli fire to refine the elixir, if I use the 7 void and 3 corporeal magic power to refine the elixir, it might damage the medicinal effect. Perhaps it can indeed draw out more pills, but the medicinal power won't be as good as it is now." Choosing the lesser of two evils, the quality of the pills is more important than quantity. Duanmu Hong frowned. You don't have to use the Nanmingli fire. Someone from the Gu clan burst out laughing, but Gu Yinqing didn't laugh. Instead, he explained seriously, using the Nanmingli fire not only increases the success rate of alchemy, but it also increases the quality of the elixir. Therefore, when using the Nanmingli fire, the amount of spirit energy drawn when opening the cauldron is the most suitable. Of course, this is relative to elixirs like the Qi reversal elixir. For other elixirs, there will be corresponding changes in the technique, but there will be many changes. It is not just the change of the magic power when opening the cauldron to refine the elixir. This needs to be adapted to the situation. After hearing Gu Yinqing's explanation, many people thought about it seriously and nodded. That is right. In order to covet the number of elixirs, he neglected the quality of the elixir. This is obviously not worth it. However, this child is not bad. He is quite talented in the alchemy path. He still needs to guard against arrogance and rashness. Otherwise, it will be easy for him to walk on the crooked path of seeking instant benefits. Then, a good seedling will be wasted. That will depend on how Xianmen Tianzong teaches him. However, looking at the current situation, there are already signs of him walking on the crooked path. Xianmen Tianzong's rise is too fast, and the entire sect is too impatient. This is unavoidable. Hearing the discussions of the surrounding people, Yang Tai, Tan Yinqing, Yan Wei, and the others were calm. However, Yi Xin Hui and the other third-generation direct disciples were frowning slightly. However, it wasn't because of their senior brother, Duanmu Hong. Instead, they were looking at the people discussing. Gu Yinqing stopped the discussion of his clansmen and waved his hand. Although his thinking is not thorough enough, it is rare for him to be able to draw inferences and think deeply. Also, don't forget that he is only at the Foundation Establishment realm. When I and all of you were at the Foundation Establishment realm, did you pay attention to the change of magic power when pulling the elixir? At that time, We would be happy for a long time if we could refine more than 5 qi restoration pills with the same amount of ingredients. The ancient clansman quietened down. Gu Yinxing turned to look at Duanmu Hong. This little friend, I remember that you are called Duanmu Hong. Are you Taoist Tang Jun's direct disciple? Duanmu Hong nodded. Gu Yinxing continued, little friend Duanmu, maintain your meticulous and open-minded way of thinking. However, you need to be more thorough when thinking about problems. Your future is limitless. In the Taishu Temple, a young man looked at Duanmu Hong and said, you have talent, but you cannot squander it like this. Blindly seeking instant benefits and greed for a moment of vanity will only lead you to the wrong path in the end. Perhaps this cannot be blamed on you. After all, the environment you grew up in is like this. One is marked by the company one keeps. It is inevitable that you will be affected. He glanced at Tang Jun and shook his head before looking at Duanmu Hong again. Some people have already sunk their feet into the mud. You still have the leeway to rein in the horse at the precipice. Conduct yourself with dignity. Yang Tai silently said, this Tao is from the Taishu Temple. Please be careful with your words. The young man smiled. Good medicine tastes bitter, and good advice is unpleasant to the ear. This has always been the case since ancient times. I admit that my words just now were a little deep, but I really cannot bear to see a good seedling of alchemy step on the wrong path. If you feel that my words are unpleasant to the ear, I can choose not to say it. However, those who hide their ailments for fear of treatment will only suffer in the end. Tang Jun, who had been staring at the flowing azure cauldron, finally regained his senses. He suddenly turned around and asked, how should I address you? My name is Chong Ling, the young man smiled faintly. Tang Jun nodded. Fellow Taoist Chong seems to have deep attainments in the Tao of alchemy. Chong Ling unhurriedly said, my master is Tao Master Ming Qi, a disciple of Tao Master Qing Ning. What I have learned from my elders in alchemy is only the tip of the iceberg. I don't dare to say how deep my attainments are, but at the very least, I know some of the most basic principles. Tao Master Ming Qi was a cultivator of the same generation as Lin Daoan and Yin Mingwei in Taishu Temple. He had entered the sect before Yin Mingwei and Pang Jia. It was just that he spent most of his time in seclusion at White Cloud Mountain and rarely went out. Even if he did go out, it was to gather herbs and refine pills, so he wasn't too famous. But within Taishu Temple, Tao Master Ming Qi's reputation was very resounding. As one of Tao Master Qing Ning's successors, his alchemy skills were superb, and he was at the top of the entire Taishu Temple. His master, Tao Master Qing Ning, had high hopes for Tao Master Ming Qi and was optimistic that he would surpass his master in the future. However, in the outside world, very few people knew of Tao Master Ming Qi. But his master, Chong Ling's master ancestor, Tao Master Qing Ning, was extremely famous. This old man had already become famous in the Middle Era. After entering the modern era, he was recognized as the #1 alchemist in Taishu Temple. His alchemy skills were superb, and not only did he far surpass his peers, but it was also difficult to find someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The Tao of alchemy was not like magic powers. The higher one's cultivation, the stronger their magic powers and the higher their alchemy skills would be. Of course, there were some alchemy methods that could only be used after one's magic powers or cultivation reached a certain level. Or, if one's magic powers were powerful enough, it would be more helpful in alchemy. But what was more important was a cultivator's own understanding and perception of the Tao of alchemy. There were many unique alchemy methods and techniques that were rooted in a cultivator's own understanding of the Tao and magic powers. They were unique methods that could only be comprehended by oneself. Not even a master could teach them. The lower one's cultivation, the greater the difference in their realm and magic powers. The Yuanying realm, Gu Yinxing, Tang Jun, and Chongling were naturally better at alchemy than the Foundation Establishment realm Duanmu Hong. This was because there were some techniques that even if Duanmu Hong knew, he couldn't use on his own, or if he couldn't use them freely, Thus, he wouldn't be able to achieve the desired effect. And the higher one's cultivation, the smaller the effect would be. This was especially true after one reached the essence soul realm. The difference in magic powers and magic powers would have a negligible effect on alchemy skills. At this time, alchemy skills mainly depended on a cultivator's own comprehension and research. With Dao Master Qing Ning as an example, it wasn't just the previous generation's Dao Master Supreme, Shoichi Daishin, and the others, but even the previous generation's Taishu Temple elders were inferior to him in terms of alchemy techniques. In the eyes of many people in this world, Dao Master Qing Ning was not only the #1 alchemist in Taishu Temple, but he was also the #1 alchemist in the entire Divine Land. Chong Ling's words sounded modest, but how could the people of Xianmen, Tianzong, not hear the ridicule in his words? Even the simple and honest Duanmu Hong widened his eyes and clenched his fists. Tang Jun calmly looked at Chong Ling and nodded. Oh, I've heard of Dao Master Qing Ning's great name for a long time. Dao Master Ming Qi must also be an alchemy expert. However, Dao Friend Chong, what you said just now is still open to discussion. Hiding one's illness for fear of treatment is indeed not advisable, but there is a prerequisite. The doctor must be a good doctor, not a quack. Chong Ling frowned slightly when he heard this. Tang Jun's expression remained indifferent. Did Dao Friend Chong grow up in White Cloud Mountain? I wonder if you've lived in the secular world. You must know that many patients who could have survived lost their lives in vain because of quacks. Tang Jun calmly walked in front of the people of Taishu Temple and looked at Chong Ling face to face. A cold smile appeared on his face. To you, it might be seeking instant benefits, but to us Xianmen disciples, it's nothing more than a trivial matter. Greedy for a moment of vanity? It's not that we're greedy for vanity, but we can bear this glory, so it naturally falls on us. Chong Ling's pupils shrank slightly. You, Tang Jun chuckled and directly turned around, leaving Chong Ling behind. He walked in front of the flowing green cauldron. Open your eyes wide and learn well. Chapter 1076. Tang Jun arrived in front of the clear flow cauldron and first looked at his disciple, Duanmu Hong. What Dao Friend Gu said is indeed correct. When using the Nanming Li flame to refine the Qi reversal pill, pulling the pill out of the cauldron to draw the magic power is more suitable. If we don't use the Nanming Li flame to refine the Qi reversal pill, we can make some changes by drawing the magic power. However, if we don't use the Nanming Li flame, the quality of the pill will inevitably drop. Then what should we do at this time? Duanmu Hong pondered and said, Think of other ways? Tang Jun smiled. That's right. We have to think of other ways to make adjustments. Pulling the pill out of the cauldron to draw the magic power isn't the only way. Hearing this, all the ancient clan's disciples frowned because Tang Jun's words were clearly referring to Gu Lianqing's refinement. There was more than one way to improve. Gu Lianqing didn't say anything and looked at Tang Jun's actions seriously. Tang Jun didn't continue to explain. He slapped his palms on the clear flow cauldron, and the milky white pure yang, true fire appeared. Then, he used his magic power to draw all the herbs into the cauldron. Blue currents appeared in the clear flow cauldron again. It was like a turbulent sea wave that was constantly moving up and down in the cauldron. Tang Jun's expression was calm as he poured his magic power into the cauldron. The milky white pure yang true fire was also burning vigorously. Although it wasn't as good as the Nanming Li flame in alchemy and blacksmithing, the pure yang true fire was pure and gentle. It was a good choice for alchemy. Gu Lianqing's attention wasn't on Tang Jun at all. He was paying attention to his every move. Chong Ling also calmed down and started to seriously watch Tang Jun refine the pill. In all fairness, if he was to refine the Qi reversal pill, his result might not be better than Gu Lianqing's. He might even be slightly inferior. Chong Ling was well aware of this. However, Gu Lianqing had the Nanming Li fire, and he didn't. Therefore, in terms of pure alchemy techniques, he and Gu Lianqing were basically on par. It was hard to say who was stronger. As one of the two most outstanding alchemists of the younger generation in Taishu Temple, Ling's attainments in the art of alchemy were actually not bad. Thus, he could basically understand Tang Jun's techniques. His standard is indeed very high, but if this is all, without the help of the Nanmingli fire, he wouldn't be able to beat Gu Lianqing. He might even be slightly inferior. Just as he was thinking, Ling's eyes suddenly widened. He saw Tang Jun's hands changing hand seals. Streams of dermic powers were injected into the azure flow cauldron. The azure air currents in the azure flow cauldron kept tumbling like boiling water. The square cauldron, which looked small but was actually very heavy, suddenly shook, as if it could explode at any moment. Are you trying to explode the cauldron by doing this? After the initial shock, Ling couldn't help but laugh. Gu Lianqing also looked at Tang Jun in shock. Dao friend Tang, the azure flow cauldron has the ability to stabilize the medicinal power, but there is a limit. If you press the medicinal power like this, there's a risk of an explosion. Tang Jun's expression was normal. Dao friend Gu, please don't be impatient. Actually, you have the Nanmingli fire, so it is much more convenient for you to use this method than me. The effect might even be better. Gu Lianqing's heart skipped a beat as he carefully stared at the azure flow cauldron. The restless ancient clan disciples beside him also calmed down when they saw this. Ling also calmed down and observed carefully. He gradually saw some clues, and his expression couldn't help but turn serious. As time passed, the azure flow cauldron still didn't stabilize and kept shaking violently as if it could explode at any moment. However, it still didn't break through the final limit and truly explode. As time passed, everyone gradually became shocked and started to guess what kind of elixir Tang Jun would be able to refine in the end, how many he could refine, and how long he would take. Time seemed to be passing very slowly, but everyone had this bit of patience, so they weren't in a hurry. Silently, they waited for the moment when the elixir was completed and the cauldron was opened. Finally, Tang Jun's hand suddenly stopped, and the azure flow cauldron also slightly paused. During this pause, Tang Jun slapped both of his palms on the azure flow cauldron and shouted, "Open!" The azure flow cauldron suddenly spewed out surging heat waves, and a green current spread out. Rays of radiance soared into the sky and condensed without dissipating. It was like a cloud of smoke and a treasure light. The fog of light was like a sea of fire that spread out in the void and didn't dissipate for a long time. Everyone stared at the sea of fire and said, "It is the same as the lotus phenomenon when Gu Lianqing opened the cauldron, but the momentum is even greater." Just based on this point, the quality of the elixir can only be stronger than Gu Lianqing's qi reversal elixir. Of course, the qi reversal elixir was a relatively ordinary elixir. No matter how different there was, it would be very small and almost undetectable. However, the ancient clan's descendants here more or less had some understanding of the path of elixir refinement, so they naturally knew how difficult it was to improve further. Tang Jun waved his sleeve to disperse the sea of fire. Everyone looked at the azure flow cauldron and saw the pinkish-white qi reversal elixir. There were exactly 13 of them. The ancient clan's descendants were all stunned, and the Taishu Temple's cultivators also slightly frowned. In the Xianmen Tianzong's camp, Yan Wuwei said with a smile, "It took exactly 45 minutes, slightly faster than Gu Daoist." As soon as he said this, the second floor of the Black Spirit Temple instantly became quiet. Although they were a little absent-minded just now, as long as they were in the Golden Elixir period, they had a basic sensitivity to time. Naturally, they could calculate the time and knew that Yan Wuwei was not lying. However, this result was a little hard for people other than Xianmen Tianzong to accept. Tang Jun actually won in terms of quality, quantity, and speed. Gu Lianqing didn't pay much attention to this. Instead, he fell into deep thought and muttered to himself, "The magic power used to guide the medicinal effect is the 7 void and 3 corporeal." He raised his head and looked at Tang Jun. "The change lies in the previous steps?" Tang Jun nodded. Before this, I increased the fire by 20%. However, when I was about to come out of the cauldron, I decreased it by 10%. That way, I could achieve the desired effect. He paused for a moment and continued. Of course, increase the fire by 20% before this, no more. Otherwise, there would really be a risk of the cauldron exploding. After that, I slowed down the fire and had to complete it in an instant. In fact, the risk of failure at the last step was higher. Tang Jun didn't say anything else. He didn't mean to boast, but most of the people here knew more about the path of elixir refinement. The difficulty of this cauldron of elixir refinement was not as simple as what Tang Jun said. If he could easily increase the fire by 20%, Big Brother Lianqing would have done it a long time ago. It's not that he doesn't want to, but it's too dangerous. An ancient clan's disciple said in a low voice, increasing the fire by 10% already has the risk of the cauldron exploding, let alone increasing the fire by 20%. Furthermore, it wasn't just a short period of time. Other than the last moment when he pulled the cauldron out of the cauldron, he had to increase the fire by 20% for the entire 45 minutes. Even if he used the clear flow cauldron, the stability of Tang Jun's elixir refinement is too high. Someone wasn't convinced. Perhaps he is just lucky. If he were to refine a few more cauldrons, there would be a chance of failure. It's like walking on the edge of a cliff. The person from before shook his head. After a full 3/4 of an hour, there was no change in the firepower at all. If there was an accident, it would have happened long ago. This means that to Tang Jun, it is indeed as he said. Increasing the firepower by 20% is within his control. Only by exceeding 20% can he escape from his control. At the very least, 45 minutes is definitely within his control, and 45 minutes is enough for him to refine this cauldron of Qi restoration elixir. Although I don't want to admit it, we might be treading on thin ice, but for him, it's a smooth road. This was actually the most shocking part. Some of the ancient clan's disciples fell into silence, and their faces were clearly filled with unwillingness. The ancient clan's disciple who spoke first was the second best alchemist among the younger generation, aside from Gu Lianqing. He looked at his clansmen and said in a low voice, "Furthermore, just like what Tang Jun said, the difficulty is even higher." The reason why he was able to refine that cauldron of elixir was because at the last moment, the fire dropped by 30%. It dropped to a level even lower than Brother Lianqing's. The others were shocked and also reacted. A sudden drop in fire and a sudden increase in fire makes it easier for the cauldron to explode. That ancient clan's disciple sighed. That's right. Furthermore, we all know that the moment before the cauldron is opened, stability is especially important. At this moment, a sudden drop in fire makes it easier for the cauldron to explode than usual. Furthermore, the intensity of the previous fire was already at a relatively dangerous level. With all of these factors combined, the difficulty of the last moment reached a height that we can't even imagine at our current level. However, fellow Taoist Tang Jun has succeeded. He has also succeeded in the last movement, which is even more difficult. From this, it also proves that his previous method of increasing the speed of the firepower by 20% for the 3/4 of an hour was indeed within his control. He had a card up his sleeve. Everyone became silent, but this time they revealed a convinced expression. Chongling's gaze went back and forth between the two cauldrons of Qi restoration elixirs refined by Tang Jun and Gu Lianqing. He had quite a bit of attainment in the alchemy path, so he didn't need to carefully compare them. Just by using his divine sense, he could tell that the quality of the two cauldrons of elixirs was almost the same. If one were to strictly compare, Tang Jun's cauldron of elixirs was even slightly better. It was truly an all-round victory in quality, quantity, and speed. However, it is not without its drawbacks. Chongling had completely calmed down at this moment. He looked at Tang Jun and said, "Refining with such a hasty fire will cause damage to the cauldron itself. Although the damage is negligible, if you use this method for a long time and maintain this style of pursuing the limit, the damage will accumulate. In the end, it will be difficult to recover and the quality of the cauldron will be permanently lowered." It is indeed not a lie to say that you are eager for quick success. You immediately demonstrated it to everyone. A portion of the people heard this and frowned. After thinking about it carefully, they knew that Chongling's words were not false. Tang Jun smiled coldly and didn't say much. His body slightly leaned to the side. Only then did the people in Chongling's direction see that one of Tang Jun's hands had been pressed on the flowing azure cauldron the entire time. Ever since he finished refining, he hadn't let go. Chapter 1077. Tang Jun moved his body slightly to the side. Only then did the people behind him see his movements clearly. On the other side, many people did not notice the problem before. At this time, as Tang Jun moved sideways, they noticed that one of Tang Jun's hands had been on the Qinglu cauldron. He is nourishing the elixir cauldron with his own Dharma power to eliminate the damage caused to the elixir cauldron. People reacted one after another. The damage caused by one alchemy is negligible. As long as it is nourished in time after the alchemy, there will be no future problems. If it is nourished in time after each alchemy, there will be no accumulation of damage. Naturally, the quality of the elixir cauldron will not be reduced. Tang Jun looked at Chongling and said lightly, "We are not like you, who blindly suppress conflicts. For existing problems, we usually solve them as soon as possible." Chongling's pupils shrank slightly. He stared at Tang Jun coldly, and his Dharma power and aura were ready to move. Tang Jun said calmly, "What? You can't compete with me in alchemy, so you want to compete with me? I can't compete with you, but your Yu friend Chun is not bad." "You." Chongling took a deep breath and was about to step forward. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded in the Black Spirit Palace. "Young man, it is better to be humble. Your technique can still be improved." As the voice sounded, the crowd saw two elders coming down from the third floor of the Black Spirit Palace. The one in front was a dignified, white-haired elder. He was Gu Yuan Kai, the venerable elder of the ancient emperor's bloodline, the spiritual awareness lord. The other was wearing a robe with a white auspicious cloud embroidered on it. He was also a hale and hearty old man, but he was Dao Master Qing Ning, the highest elder of the Taishu Temple. Dao Master Qing Ning and Gu Yuan Kai came down from the third floor of the Black Spirit Palace together. Chun Xingyu, Chong Ling, Gu Yinxing, and other disciples of the ancient emperor bloodline of the Taishu Temple all saluted them. Chong Ling looked at Dao Master Qing Ning, a look of shame on his face. He couldn't help but lower his head. Dao Master Qing Ning glanced at Chong Ling and said nothing. Although his previous words were directed at Tang Jun, he did not look at Tang Jun at this moment. Instead, he looked at the other side of the hall on the second floor of the Black Spirit Palace and said, "Xiaoyan, you should teach your disciple yourself." Everyone was shocked and turned to look, but they still felt that there was no one in that direction. The next moment, Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhen, Er's figures slowly appeared in front of them. It wasn't that it didn't exist in the past. It was just that under the influence of Xiao Yin and Yi Shiwen's magic power, no one could detect its existence. At the same time, even if they saw it, they would subconsciously ignore it. Xiaoyan looked at Dao Master Qing Ning, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Dao Master Qing Ning seemed to be quite graceful and didn't interfere with the internal teaching of Xianmen Tianzong, but in fact, he put himself in a very high position. Not only Tang Jun, but also Xiao Yin. Dao Master Qing Ning's words clearly showed that he didn't want to teach Tang Jun, but he wanted Xiao Yin to give a plan to improve Tang Jun's technique, and then he would comment on Xiao Yan's plan. "Oh, he really put on a good show." Xiao Yan shook his head and laughed. In all fairness, with Dao Master Qing Ning's age, experience, and identity, it was not too much for him to do so. Seriously speaking, Xiao Yan's age might not even be a fraction of his age, so Xiao Yan didn't refute him calling him little friend. But to comment on the improvement of Tang Jun's alchemy technique was another matter. Among the two parties who had just clashed, Tang Jun was Xiao Yan's disciple, and Chong Ling was Dao Master Qing Ning's grand disciple. Dao Master Qing Ning and Gu Yuankai were old acquaintances, and Gu Yuankai was Xiao Zhen-er's granduncle. No matter how you looked at it, he could also be regarded as Xiao Yan's elder, but this was all from Xiao Yan's side. It was a different matter from Lin Feng's side. There had always been disputes about how to calculate Lin Feng's seniority in the Divine Land, but Lin Feng himself didn't care much about this. Most of the people he talked to were fellow Taoists. Among these people, there was no lack of seniority, but everyone could only listen to what Lin Feng wanted to do, so the final result was that they all made friends. However, Lin Feng could do as he pleased, but others couldn't ignore him. From being regarded as a big shot on the same level as Yin Nan Lai, Liang Pan, Shi Yu, and Xian Longxing in the past, to being recognized as a giant on the same level as the four elders of the Great Void. How to position Lin Feng was a headache for others. In the end, they could only address him as the master of the celestial sect, and because of Lin Feng, this problem was also extended to his personal disciples, Xiao Yin and Zhu Yi. The relationship between Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple was originally a bit tit-for-tat, and the situation just now was not harmonious at all. Dao Master Qingning's approach was clearly to get back at Taishu Temple and beat up Xiao Yin, Tang Jun, and the others in Xianmen Tianzong. The posture he put on was like a teacher inspecting the homework of a student from a high position. Although there were rumors that Xiao Yin was good at alchemy, for Dao Master Qingning, he had enough confidence in the way of alchemy, not to mention other aspects. Xiao Yin slightly sneered. He had never been in contact with Dao Master Qingning before. If it was another occasion, he wouldn't mind exchanging alchemy with him in a pleasant atmosphere. But since the other party had made a move, he had no reason not to take it. Even today, who is calming down day by day? In Xiao Yin's dictionary, there has never been the phrase, to endure a moment of calm. His creed had always been this. If you want to fight, then fight. Tang Jun's tough style of dealing with outsiders stemmed from his own personality, but it also stemmed from his master. The improvement that Dao Master Qingning mentioned should be referring to the moment when my disciple was in a hurry to refine the pill and suddenly lower the firepower just before it left the furnace. In truth, the strength of the firepower could have been lowered a bit more, right? Xiao Yin said lightly. In other words, compared to before, the difference in the strength of the firepower has reached 4 points. As a result, the quality of the pill will be a bit higher. As soon as Xiao Yin said this, although there was no uproar because he, Dao Master Qingning, and Gu Yuankai were all present at the same time, the faces of the younger disciples were filled with shock. Tang Jun's method was already extremely difficult. It required a high level of control over the strength of the firepower. Among the younger disciples present, it could be said that no one could do it besides him. As for the others, just maintaining a higher level of firepower was already enough to cause the furnace to explode at any moment, not to mention the sudden change in firepower at the end. But now, Xiao Yin actually said that there was an even more intense change in firepower. How could they not be shocked? As the old saying went, the difficulty of taking a step further from the highest level of enlightenment was not as simple as taking a single step. Gu Lianqing looked at Gu Yuankai and asked, "Great uncle, is this something a Yuanying realm cultivator can do?" The level of alchemy wasn't completely linked to a cultivator's own cultivation realm, supernatural powers, and magic power. However, in a situation where the level of pure technique was similar, those with a higher cultivation would naturally have an easier time than those with a lower cultivation. This was because those with a higher cultivation could use their stronger supernatural powers to make up for some of the flaws in their technique. To put it bluntly, they were relying on their own strength to resist. However, some flaws in technique could be made up for, while others couldn't. Otherwise, the title of number 1 alchemist in Taishu Temple wouldn't have been Dao Master Qingning's turn. When one's cultivation realm was low, this kind of situation was more common. Gu Lianqing couldn't use Tang Jun's alchemy method right now. If he tried, he would most likely explode his furnace. However, if he was at the primordial spirit realm, then even if his alchemy level was still at the current level, he could still use Tang Jun's method. that was to use his more refined control of magic power to stabilize the furnace from the outside. He wouldn't be like Tang Jun, who completely relied on alchemy techniques to control the pill fire. However, if he followed Xiaoyan's method, Gu Lianxing didn't have full confidence that he could withstand it with external force, even if he was at the primordial spirit realm. The difficulty wasn't something that could be made up for with external force. What looked like a simple technique was constantly breaking through the limits. It was already close to the Tao. Gu Yuankai silently replied, "A Yuanying realm cultivator can do it." The surprise on Gu Lianxing's face became even more intense. Then, he revealed a look of realization. Gu Yuankai nodded. "This old man and Dao venerate Qing Ning can do it. That young man named Tang Jun is indeed very talented. He should be able to do it if he trains a bit more." As for him, Gu Yuankai looked at Xiaoyan, slightly shaking his head. Although this person is straightforward and violent and has little respect for the wise, he is not a person who lies. Since he said so, he should be able to do it himself. That's why he proposed this improvement plan. There is always someone better. After a long time, Gu Lianxing recovered and sighed. The world is big, and there are many heroes. Lianxing is still far from that. Gu Yuankai smiled. "It's good that you understand this principle." He looked at Xiaoyan. "Will you understand this principle today?" Dao venerate Qing Ning's gaze also fell on Xiaoyan. His expression was calm. There was no joy or sorrow on his face. "Little friend Xiaoyan is wise. This is indeed an area that can be improved." Xiaoyan calmly said, "When pulling the pill out of the furnace, the 7 voids and 3 real and 6 voids and 4 real are not the best choices. The most ideal state is to guide the real and fake magic power. 6.5 is fake and 3.5 is real. In this case, with the same amount of herbs, there is a 70% chance of refining 14 Qi restoration pills." This was a great test for the alchemy technique, especially the last pulling of the pill out of the furnace. The reason why Tang Jun and Gu Lianxing used the 6 voids and 4 real and 7 voids and 3 real changes was because the method Xiao Yin mentioned was more difficult. They couldn't grasp it yet. The others were shocked to the point where they were numb. Dao venerate Qing Ning and Gu Yuankai's eyes flashed at the same time. The rumors are not exaggerated. Xiao Yin is indeed very talented and accomplished in alchemy. In addition to fire control, Xiao Yin had also improved the method of pulling the pill. Even the two of them could only do this when they were below the primordial spirit realm. Xiao Yin calmly looked at Dao venerate Qing Ning. "Dao venerate Qing Ning, I wonder if there are any omissions in what I just said?" After a moment of silence, Dao venerate Qing Ning nodded. "Little friend Xiao Yan's talent in alchemy is indeed rare. In time, he will become a great person." "So, Dao venerate Qing Ning has nothing to add?" Xiaoyan said slowly. Dao venerate Qing Ning's heart suddenly sank. A bad premonition rose in his heart. The next moment, he heard Xiaoyan say, "But I feel that there are still omissions." Chapter 1078. Xiaoyan could see the meaning behind Dao Master Qing Ning's previous actions, and so could many others. Even people who can't see through it will also vaguely have a feeling in their hearts that Xiao Yin in front of Dao Lord Qing Ning is only a junior who hasn't grown up yet. In front of the Void Temple, the Xian Gate Sky sect in the end is still a head shorter. The limitless glory of Tang Jun's counterattack against Chong Ling before, after Dao Lord Qing Ning appeared, it all turned to smoke. Xiao Yin and Xianmin Tianzong seemed to be a head shorter in front of Dao Master Qing Ning and Taishu Temple. They were like immature boys. This was an impression that was rooted in the bottom of one's heart. It would quietly and subconsciously affect one's judgment on other matters. For Xianmin Tianzong and Xiao Yin, this was a dilemma. It was even more troublesome than Dao Master Qing Ning directly pointing out Tang Jun's negligence. He had given Tang Jun pointers. Although he was accusing Xianmin Tianzong of losing face, it was not shameful for Tang Jun. After all, Tang Jun was only a Yuanying stage cultivator, while Dao Master Qing Ning was the highest elder of Taishu Temple who had been famous for more than 10,000 years and was at the Dao integration realm. If he had no other intentions, as the top authority on alchemy in the Divine Land, giving Tang Jun some pointers in this aspect might have become a good story. It would also ease the tense atmosphere caused by the tit-for-tat confrontation between Tang Jun and Chongling. Although Chongling had suffered in front of Tang Jun, Dao Master Qing Ning had come to get back at him, which was a bit like bullying. However, Dao Master Qing Ning had indeed come to get back at him. He didn't stare at Tang Jun, but he swept Xiao Yin in. After suppressing Xiao Yin, Tang Jun was naturally nothing. If Xiao Yin couldn't say anything, Xianmen Tianzong would undoubtedly lose more face. Dao Master Qing Ning didn't need to be aggressive to improve Tang Jun's alchemy technique. He could do Gu Yuan a favor. After all, Gu Lianqing had also been defeated by Tang Jun. Even if Xiao Yin gave an answer, as long as it didn't exceed the scope of Dao Master Qing Ning's answer. Even if the two improved methods were exactly the same, the inherent impression of a teacher testing a student would be left behind. Dao Master Qing Ning could easily suppress Xiao Yin, unless the answer given by Xiao Yin was even more outstanding than Dao Master Qing Ning's. Dao Master Qing Ning was very confident in himself before, but at this moment, when he saw Xiao Yin, who was usually like a raging fire, suddenly become unhurried and unhurried, an ominous premonition suddenly rose in his heart. Xiao Yin casually said, "Does Dao Master Qing Ning feel that there is no problem? But I feel that there is still a problem. When my disciple and nephew Lianqing pulled the pill out of the cauldron, other than the change in the real and illusory Fa Li, everything else was similar." Xiao Yan's finger gently tapped the flowing azure cauldron. "But, Dao Master Qing Ning, what do you think will happen when the pill is pulled out of the cauldron and the Fa Li is pulled out for half a turn?" Dao Master Qing Ning's pupils suddenly shrank. Gu Yuankai's snow-white eyebrows also gently trembled. For the first time since he appeared, the expression on his face had become slightly serious. Their eyelids gently drooped and their eyes flashed. Whether it was for Xiao Yin or for them, the level of the qi-converting pill was too low, so they did not need to open the cauldron to refine the pill themselves. As long as they simulated it in their minds, they could roughly know the result. The result of the deduction made the light in Dao Master Qing Ning's eyes slightly dim, but Gu Yuankai's expression did not change. He looked up at Xiao Yin with a slightly complicated gaze. The current successor of the ancient emperor, the best alchemist, was not Gu Jun, who was at the first tribulation stage, but Gu Yuankai, who was standing here. Xiao Yan's expression was calm and indifferent. Dao Master Qing Ning did not speak, but Gu Yuankai sighed. On the basis of the original two improvements, when opening the cauldron and pulling out the pill, the Fa Li will be pulled out for half a turn. I am 100% sure that I can refine 14 pills. Everyone on the second floor of the Black Spirit Palace, including Xiao Zhan, and Xianmen Tianzong, gasped. Duanmu Hong pulled Yin Wuwei's sleeve and murmured, "Grandmaster is so powerful." His unintentional words immediately resonated with the hearts of everyone present. To be able to surpass Dao Master Qing Ning and Gu Yuankai in the way of alchemy, this would not only shock all the cultivators in the world who were obsessed with alchemy, but also the entire Divine Land and even the entire Great Tianyuan world. At this time, even if Xiao Yin, Gu Yuankai, and Dao Master Qing Ning were present, they could not stop the suppressed discussion from rising in the crowd. Dao Master Qing Ning can almost be regarded as the best alchemist in the Divine Land. I am afraid that only ninth great uncle can be compared to him. But now, even the two of them can't beat Elder Xiao of Xianmen Tianzong? Not necessarily. After all, the level of Qi Restoration Pill is too low. Elixirs have their own limits. I can only say that Elder Xiao of Xianmen Tianzong is better than Dao Master Qing Ning and ninth great uncle in alchemy at the Yuanying stage, but it does not mean that he is the same at the higher levels. After all, He has only reached the primordial soul stage for a limited period of time. He cannot compare with the two of them who have studied and practiced for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. The time they have spent in alchemy is longer than his age, and the top herbs and elixir recipes he has come into contact with are definitely not more than the two of them. The gap in knowledge and experience is too big. Yes, in fact, he may not be better than Ancestor Qing Ning and Tao Master Ling Ju, even if they are below the primordial soul stage. He is only slightly better at refining the Qi restoration pill. This kind of flash of inspiration is not unheard of in the process of alchemy. Many elixir recipes are improved because of this. Xiaoyan did not say much about the discussions of the crowd. He smiled slightly and looked at Tang Jun, Yang Tai, and the others. This is a rare opportunity. It is also a good thing for you to exchange pointers with fellow Taoists. After saying this, he cupped his fists towards Tao Master Qing Ning and Gu Yuankai. Elders, please go ahead. I will take my leave first. Tao Master Qing Ning looked at Xiao Yan and slowly said, Fellow Xiao really has a deep understanding of the Tao of alchemy. It makes this old man feel refreshed. If you don't mind, please stay for a moment and let's have a good exchange. At this moment, his words were much calmer, no longer relying on his seniority and condescension. However, it made Xiao Yan's heart sink slightly, and he became vigilant. Tao Master Qing Ning looked at Gu Yuankai. Fellow Gu, we are all old. Although our interests have not diminished, our progress in the way of alchemy has been decreasing over the years. It has gradually stagnated. We can only ponder on it on our own, and it is inevitable that we will gradually become complacent. It is rare for fellow Xiao to emerge. We have an alchemy master to exchange experiences with. The three of us will follow the example of the ancients and have a small elixir meeting. What do you two think? Gu Yuankai narrowed his eyes. Elixir meeting. Elixir meetings were more common in ancient times. Xia Huang and the ancient emperor, two human sovereigns of similar eras, were both top alchemy masters. Under their guidance, the divine land's alchemy techniques were greatly developed, and there would often be grand meetings of alchemy and alchemy competitions. Even the emperor of the underworld, who reigned between the two of them, actually had extremely high attainments in the way of alchemy. During the long years of the three great Renhuang's reign, elixir gatherings of various sizes, high and low levels, could be seen everywhere in the vast land of the divine prefecture. Even the three Renhuangs had personally held a grand elixir gathering. That was the golden age of the way of alchemy. After entering the Middle Era, although there would be grand meetings from time to time, they were far less prosperous than in ancient times. However, Gu Yuankai did not think that Tao Master Qing Ning really wanted to exchange alchemy experiences with him and Xiao Yan. His proposal was naturally for an essential matter at the elixir meeting. Alchemy competition, alchemy battle. Tao Master Qing Ning was officially going to compete with Xiao Yan. Looking at the calm, Tao Master Qing Ning, Gu Yuankai sighed slightly. Tao Master Qing Ning was trying to regain the face he had just lost, but he was also excited by the prospect. Xiao Yan's level in alchemy far exceeded Tao Master Qing Ning's and Gu Yuankai's expectations. This surprised the two old men and made their hands itch. Not to mention Tao Master Qing Ning. Even Gu Yuankai wanted to see how high the level of alchemy the young man in front of him, who was less than a fraction of his age, was at. Whether it was Gu Yuankai or Tao Master Qing Ning, they were quite obsessed with the way of alchemy. Suddenly, there was an expert in the same field, so it was inevitable that they would want to compete. Gu Yuankai and Tao Master Qing Ning, for various reasons, although they knew each other, they had never really competed. Now that there was suddenly an opportunity in front of them, and there was also a shocking Xiao Yin joining in, Gu Yuankai's interest was immediately piqued. However, Gu Yuankai was not without doubts. He looked at Tao Master Qing Ning and said, "Does he have other ideas? Alchemy battle, alchemy competition. Wait, could it be that he wants to?" A light flashed in his mind, and Gu Yuankai's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. His expression became slightly complicated, but he did not raise any objections. Oh, the Elixir Association, the three of us? Xiaoyan was also a little surprised. He looked at Dao Master Qingning and asked, "How do we compete?" Slowly, Dao Master Qingning said, "Everyone will rely on their own ability to refine a kind of elixir. First, we will compare the efficacy of the elixir. The higher the quality of the elixir, the better. If there is a clear difference in the level of the elixir, other factors will not be considered. The superior elixir will win. If there is no clear difference in the level of the elixir, then we will compare the quality of the elixir, the number of elixirs, and the time taken to refine the elixir." Xiaoyan crossed his arms with interest and said, "Some elixirs may not be refined in decades or even centuries. Are we going to compete in hundreds or thousands of years?" "Naturally, there will be a deadline," Dao Master Qingning replied without hesitation. "So choosing what kind of elixir to refine is also a test. It tests the alchemist's ability to grasp their own level and time. It tests the balance between the speed of refining elixir and the quality of the elixir." Xiaoyan nodded, a faint smile on his face. He stared at Dao Master Qingning and said, "In the ancient Elixir Association, there was an alchemy battle, and there were other things to pay attention to. Could it be that we also have one this time?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.